Welcome to Advisory Design Panel for the third day of May 2017. Welcome to the traditional territory of the First Nations, Squamish Nation. Motion to adopt the agenda. Second. Committee minutes. Minutes from Public Art Steering Committee. Is that, who's presenting that? Oh, I got it. No, I had the wrong agenda. That'll be it. There we go. That's a little bit better. Put those over there. There. We are here the 4th of May, not the 3rd of May. So I guess I've been appointed chair. Oh, appointment of chair for 2017. What's I thought that was done last month.
We already have, yeah.
So you're chair and you're vice chair, correct? Okay. Okay. Minutes from the meeting of 20th of April. I wasn't present for that. Has everybody reviewed those and any comments on them?
I just had one comment
Yes.
actually. It was on one of my comments. It was about the table space. And I actually recommended that one of the seats be removed, and it says accessible seating, so we won't have to move the other, but if you
One
just
of the
put-
chairs be removed. That's
Yeah.
right.
one of the seats be removed. Otherwise, approved.
Okay. Any business arising? Hearing none. Okay, on with today's agenda. Our first item is development permit number 443 at 1365 Victoria Street. If staff would introduce the project and the applicant, please.
Thank you, Crosland. So yes, this is a 6-story mixed-use development that's proposed quite close to where we are at the corner of 2nd and Victoria. And so it falls under our downtown DP Area 2 design guidelines. This project has not previously been presented to the advisory design panel. The proposal largely fits within the zoning regulations. They are seeking a 3-stall parking variance as well as a loading bay variance, but other than that, the height and massing fits within the zoning regulations. So staff is seeking ADP comments on the form and character of the proposal, both architecture, landscape, and the site plan. And I'll just run over the specific comments that staff has after reviewing the proposal against the DP area guidelines. So the proposal has a parkade on the bottom 2 floors. And so staff is seeking comment on the facade treatment of those first 2 stories on the east and north elevations. Also, DP guideline requires that the building steps back at the 3rd story, and this proposal steps back at the top story. Does the metal corrugated siding that's proposed as the primary exterior cladding material meet the guideline, conveying a feeling of quality and permanence? Does the proposed white color of the hardy panels meet the DP wording, reflect the natural environment? And all of these comments are in the agenda package. A flat roof is proposed, which is not in alignment with one of the DP area guidelines. A canopy is proposed along Victoria Street and 2nd Avenue, and wondering if that meets the wording that it should be provided along the front face of all buildings. Aluminum doors and vinyl windows are proposed, and wood framing is not. And we have a specific DP area guideline related to that. So 2 more, the location of the accessible parking space in the underground parkade. With staff review, just the comment, is it conveniently located? And finally, the parking stall that's located in the rear, adjacent to Victoria Street. There's a DP area guideline requiring landscape screening for all parking stalls. So seeking comments on that. And so there's AKA Architecture and Considered Design Landscape. They're here to present the proposal.
Thank you very much. The consulting team want to introduce your team members and proceed? About 20 minutes to present.
Andreas Nowinski, architect from AKA.
Luke Tyson, project director at AKA.
Julie Patterson, considered design landscape architects.
And Luke's going to get started. Wanted to thank everybody for coming. I guess this is an extra meeting because of the amount of work that's happening in town these days. So thanks for making the time.
Okay. So the primary objective of this project was to create long-term rental apartments, with typically 1 and 2 bedrooms, with quite a considerable amount of storage to facilitate people who typically live in Squamish and their lifestyles. The building occupies a currently vacant site it's a corner lot site in downtown Squamish at the intersection of 2nd Avenue and Victoria Street. We have a new, it's in close proximity to where we are right now, really. The massing of the buildings nearby is typically 4 to 5 stories. We are looking to do typically a rental building. We wanted to make sure that with that being our primary objective, we were trying to make that appropriate for its context and to at Streetscape to propose more of a mixed-use building, providing animated commercial storefronts at the street level. On the streets, there will be 3 separate commercial spaces that will front directly onto both 2nd and Victoria Street.
So Jonas, can I get you to help me out here? Just so we can go full screen on this.
How do you use Windows?
Good question.
Yeah, we're all Mac all the time, so PC is like... That was better, actually, you could see.
This?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Can everyone see that okay? So our goal at street level is to create more of a positive and continuous public streetscape along the frontage of the building by trying to use a dynamic language to inform wayfinding and spatial separation. As a result, the commercial storefronts are set back from the property line at key locations, and that results in a widening of the sidewalk and creates more of a varied street level experience. In this area, the residential lobby entrance is featured along Victoria Avenue and is defined with a pronounced canopy and a unique facade treatment to form a sense of identity with the residences above. It is further emphasised and tied in vertically through the application of wooden louvers, which you can see cut the building straight down the middle. This forms a primary entrance to the building, and it also provides a route through the parkade and 2 office spaces that are located above on the 2nd story. Secondary residential exit stair lobby is located on 2nd Avenue. Moving into program. The office space, we're primarily putting office space on the 2nd floor. This was previously discussed with the district, and we were directed there is a preference of council to provide office space in this location rather than residential. So we're trying to appropriate this with what's more aligned with the council's desires. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just going to flip ahead here. Just 1 second. Yeah, so this is the level 1 plan. So the building takes up most of the site. And we've got parking on the first floor, parking area here, and a ramp that goes up to parking above. And the remainder of the space is dedicated to commercial space and a lobby. And then the commercial, this is the 2nd floor, so this is the 2nd level of parking. And the street faces, so along Victoria and along 2nd are commercial space. And this was a response to some discussions with council members who are interested in seeing additional commercial space provided on the second floor of buildings in the downtown. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Above this, running from the 3rd floor to the 6th, is a combination of in total 32 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. These are typically 5 2-beds and 3 1-beds on each floor. And the intention is for the units to be long-term rental to try and address the needs for the housing in Squamish. each unit also has access to a central core where there are storage lockers located in there, and each storage locker houses 2 bike storage spaces and additional storage spaces for each unit. Okay, moving on to parking. Parking is also provided. Can you skip on to the second floor? Yeah. It's provided on the first and second floors behind each of the commercial spaces. And each parking space is separated, but both are accessed from the laneway through separate doors. Level 2 is accessed from a ramp, which is on the north side of the building. The project generates, we've provided 38 spaces. 2 accessible spaces are included within that. We've located 1 accessible space on the intersection of the laneway and Victoria Street. And then the second one is also within the parkade at level 1, which will have level access through to the residential lobbies and also out onto the streets and vertically up into the office spaces and residential spaces above. Should we go to?
Okay, well, what,
Should we skip?
yeah, well, let's go to that.
So moving into form of the building, it's largely defined by a sweeping curve that wraps the building from the 2nd floor up to the 5th. And then it's further emphasized by the curve of the roof eave above on the 6th floor. The primary material is a metal siding in a deep brown. I guess we can probably pass this around. Trying to go, I've got them on a tray for you here just to make it more convenient. So the primary material is actually a metal siding. It's a 5 1/4 inch width, and it's a deep brown wood effect panel. That's going to be accentuated by punctuations from the windows and the balconies, which are in an accenting colour of an off-warm white. It's called it's Benjamin Moore colour of cloud cover. This helps to articulate the facade and sort of informs the building's scale and massing. When we move to the 6th floor, it's set back a foot to try and reduce that mass and bring it more down to a street scale. To reduce the building scale and the mass, which is then expressed by the flying roof, which looks up on each corner. We'll have a white soffit as well to match the accent colour. So the overall design form is intended to more express a clarity just through simple forms and the use of minimal mass material. And that's pretty well
We'll run it into some streetscape. When we run up to density.
Um,
I'll get there eventually.
Landscape treatment's fairly simple. It's very much been taken on board the downtown Squamish streetscape guidelines in terms of the treatment of the sidewalk. One, I guess, slightly different element would be that we're introducing the idea of the pigment-dyed concrete around the base of the building, so that's intentionally to give the building a dark grounding tone. That then extends in bands that cut across the sidewalk, which would be, I guess traditionally they'd be exposed aggregate concrete. We're actually proposing that these are green finished pigment dye concrete. We are very aware that the exposed aggregate isn't too wheelchair friendly, per se. So the pigment dye is a little easier to run across. Planting of bump outs on the corners, drought tolerant. Largely drought tolerant planting, Bromspear, lavender and Pennisetum, which is the dwarf fountain grass. And then the trees again are in, as per the District of Squamish guidelines for Victoria Street. As you can see, there isn't space to put them along 2nd Avenue, unfortunately. There's also power lines for 2nd Avenue, so we didn't get anything in there. The separation between the disabled parking space at the rear of the property, we're proposing a line of high quality stainless steel bollards, which will be very visible, so 1,200 millimeters high, 200 millimeter diameter. So it's a very, very clean, simple definition between the sidewalk and the parking space. There you go. Oh, I should mention, sorry, 6 Class B cycle racks in front of the main entrance, essentially.
Andreas, does that conclude your presentation?
Oh, yes, sir.
Sorry.
It does.
I thought you were searching for something.
No, it's-
Okay, so the next portion is the panel members will ask you each a few questions. Jenna, do you want to start?
I'll just exclude
Oh.
myself. I've got a conflict of interest with this property. I'm the civil consultant on it, so I'll just step aside.
All right, thanks.
Just regards to the landscape, what's the spacing for the trees?
As per the,
It's per those from.
per the Swatch guidelines,
Going
yeah.
back.
Yeah, they're 25 feet, I think.
And do you recall, Pat, have you, in your narrative, you're mentioning seating, I believe.
There is a seat at which is actually part of your guys', is that still on there?
Yeah, on the corner?
On the corner, yeah.
Yeah.
So there's one on the corner.
So
It's that seat there.
Yeah, it's right here. We've got like a seating bench built into the corner of the building. That corner is inset on the first floor, and so the building actually overhangs there. The building itself provides overhang, and then seating below that.
Sounds good. And then the basalt columns are just amongst the
Oh,
planting?
you've actually got maybe an old rationale there.
Oh,
We don't
do
have
you?
any basalt columns
Okay.
anymore. We did have at one point.
Oh, that's true.
They don't.
Okay, thanks. That's all, thank you.
Okay. You, Derek?
On the main rendering on the front, it doesn't look like the corner have balconies on each level.
It's
Commercial.
on the corner of Second and
Yeah, on the second,
Sure.
on the third and fourth story, there's a detail of the building comes of the, yeah, if you look at the top right detail,
yeah, here,
yeah, so right below that, the 2 white strips there, horizontal strips,
right
it
here.
doesn't look like there's a floor in there. Is that the intention? Is that actually?
Oh, there's floor there.
Okay.
Yeah, those are balconies on the corner. So
Okay.
the corners are
Um,
each unit has a balcony.
Okay, perfect. And then, my other question would be, was there any consideration for putting landscaping on the roof?
There was early on. Yeah, we're right up at the roof level. So the most that could be done there would be to do a green roof, I guess, sedums or something like that. But that was kind of the extent of discussion. There wasn't a discussion to have an accessible roof or anything like that because of the building height.
Okay. Thank you, that's my question.
Thanks, Derek.
I
Cheryl?
don't have questions.
Okay. Counselor?
Yeah, I was just also curious about how the overhang went around the corner. So the glass stops and then you go in around.
Yeah, that's right. So if you,
Yeah.
I'll just go to the plan here.
Well, you had it right there.
Let's slow in the generation here. So where the cursor is here, so the building above is where the dark pavement is below here.
Yeah.
And then the glass is set in, the storefront is set in, and then there's a bench there. So we envision, that there would be some tables and chairs here along the bench as well, if there was, something like a coffee shop.
Where does the covered portion come out to?
It basically covers where it's dark here. That's where the building is above. So
the
that's all
sidewalk-
overhang there.
The
to
sidewalk is
sidewalk.
not covered? Those are actually sidewalk panels, they're not glass?
Yeah, you're looking at sidewalk panels here. Yeah, that's correct. There is cover here. We've got canopy up above here.
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, let's go here. So you can see the canopies here along the 2 sides. And then underneath here, this is cut away so that that corner itself forms a canopy in effect.
I really like those canopies and I really like the idea of them going all the way around for snow problems.
It doesn't snow here.
That's the liquid snow.
I think we had a little too
No,
much snow this year.
well, I like the, I heard you say green roof. Yeah.
I'll ask my questions as it goes by me. To staff, on the parking, 100% of the parking is small.
Yes.
Is that permissible? Is that a relaxation or what?
Our zoning bylaw allows 100% small car stalls within the downtown.
Okay. And the in lieu is pay cash to the district and hope people find a spot on the street? Is that the idea?
Yeah, it's paid cash in lieu to the district, and it goes into a reserve fund, potentially in the future to build at-grade or parkade in the future elsewhere.
Okay.
Just for the commercial stalls.
Just for the
Yes.
commercial,
I want to check in there, it's like the small parking here is very close to the same size as the normal parking size in Vancouver. It's only 6 inches shorter, but it's got the same width as a normal parking stall in Vancouver. So just as a reference,
Good.
it's not really that small.
Is there roof access? There's no overrun in the elevator or the stairway?
There would be roof access through the stairway, through a ladder.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and there would be a penthouse for the elevator overrun of about 5 or 6 feet.
And Julian, and so the Proboscia and the Pensman are essentially deciduous, right? So there's some big plantings there that might be pretty bare. How do you get through the winter seasons?
I think we actually see Perovskite as more of a kind of, because the actual twig form of Perovskite is actually quite attractive in winter, so we suggest that it's left essentially.
Good.
Same with Pennisetums, I think, the days of cutting down grasses through winter are kind of numbered. I think they look great.
Sure, good. Okay, that was my questions. Sarah?
Can you tell me what the width is between the bollards?
With between the
On
bollards, yep, they are spaced at, that's a very good question. I don't remember actually. Let's work it out. They are, I think it's a meter.
Okay, perfect, that's all my questions.
Yep.
On the east elevation, is there going to be a relief of that shadow between the hardy and the wood?
On the east elevation.
You have the inset hardy panel?
Yes,
Inset.
that's right, yeah.
So it is going to be articulated? It's hard to see on the plan? Okay.
Yeah, it's a little easier to see.
You can see it in the rendering,
You
yeah.
see in the rendering that there is articulation, and the brown metal is sort of seen as a skin that has some depth, and then the window areas are blocks that are cut from that, so that you will see some depth in that skin.
And that's a flush fit, like fine line reveal when
Yeah.
they're linked together, not a gap?
It's called a mini flush, so it's got it's got a little bit of a line. You'll see them as individual boards in effect, rather than a plane.
That's it.
Is it Chris? That's it, Chris, yeah?
Yep.
Sorry, Derek, yeah.
With not providing the setback where the building sits back on the upper floors, have you guys provided anything in lieu of that to say, this is what we're taking here, but we're giving something back?
I think what we've done is like we want to kind of honor the spirit of that, like having some setting back of larger buildings. I think that a lot of those, the discussion has been around, around the table when I was on ADP as well, that the design guidelines that are in the OCP for the downtown are, they're from the 90s and they are being rewritten and have been rewritten. So, and that's one of the issues that repeatedly came up, is this kind of wedding cake effect. But we're not setting it back there because we don't really see an advantage to setting it back there. But we do see an advantage to setting back the top floor, so that we can articulate a kind of more of a horizontal volume. So it's not entirely a vertical volume, but we have a more of a horizontal volume with the top floor being set back from that, and being a separate volume in essence.
Thank you.
Sorry, one more question, can I?
Yeah, Chris.
The canopy at the entrances with the timber underneath, that's a glazed canopy, and then it has a fascia of sorts? Is that upright, or is it a difference in the?
Yeah,
plan versus
right here?
elevation? Yeah, so is that glass panel on the backside and some sort of fascia?
It is, well, it'll be a solid canopy.
Okay.
Cantilever canopy.
And then the glass one you showed in plan, when Ted was asking about,
Oh,
am I miss?
no, there isn't really a glass one, but we were talking about this corner, how the building here is overhanging the corner to provide rain cover.
I thought you showed a plan, oh, so this plan, so that's roof.
That's roof, yeah,
Okay,
that's the
not
canopy.
glazed, okay.
It's not glazed canopy.
Okay.
yeah.
Thanks.
Sure, I have a question.
Councillor First,
Oh, thank you.
requested?
Yeah, well, actually, it was just maybe a question to staff on the setbacks, and I know Third Avenue is our bike route, and Main Street is our bike route, so those are two roads that we're trying to encourage the buildings to set back, is that right?
Yes,
Yeah, so,
Second Avenue to Third Avenue.
but not these ones.
Well, this is on Second Avenue, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's just Third and Main. On the bike routes, we're trying to get the buildings to step back so that we have more room for everything.
Exactly.
But did we not also kind of talk about covered walkways? I mean, wasn't one of the reasons for setting the building back to have the covered walkways?
No, the covered walkways is, that could be a DPR guideline. And I think that's where we'll be moving with the OCT. But the setback is specifically to accommodate street trees, bike lanes, parkings,
Yeah.
wider sidewalks.
Sure.
I guess second level commercial, is there any consideration for signage, like where the signage for a second level commercial?
Right, yeah. Probably a lot of window signage or along that band, along the bottom here. Probably here.
Okay, well, as long as you're prepared for that to be a part of your architecture.
Right.
Because I would be a little bit hesitant, you kind of made a gesture for the curve, which is nice, but just think about it.
Yeah.
Can I add one last one, just because there's no building or wall sections, what's the detail of the upper canopy and how do you kind of preserve that crisp whiteness? And it's a flash material?
Yeah, it'll be a deep metal flash.
Okay, the full distance.
The
of
full,
rip
yeah,
up.
the depth of it. That's right.
Okay, I think that's it for questions. Chris, do you want to start? We'll go backwards. Fair?
Sure.
You ready for that?
Sure. No, but sure. I don't think I really have any negative comments. I know the covered canopy gets brought up a lot being continuous, but I think there's enough overlap at the main entrances that I think it's sufficient. And I like that it's a different sort of overhang with the inset at the corner. Kind of makes the corner special, which obviously you're trying to do with the shape of the building, so I don't mind that. I think it would be nice to screen, and Elaine brought that up, the surface accessible stall at the lane with some sort of landscape or some sort of screen, might be architectural or something, and just to complete that corner. Otherwise, I quite like the storefront kind of branding and material palette, keeping natural woods under there, and even a bit of play on the signage. Like if that can really happen, I think that's great. Than making it look too overtly commercial, it actually makes it architectural. So I think that's a real positive. It's never great to see a parking variance on a building this size. So is it 3 stalls they're asking for reduction?
It's 3 stalls and so.
Residential stalls.
No, commercial.
Just commercial?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm okay with that. Yeah, I think it's great. Probably one of the first projects we've seen a different approach to storage being on each floor. Maybe, it's not really a comment, but the floor treatment of those floors, interior grid, are super durable. Bikes are coming up there. So yeah, overall I think it's a nice project. It's some well thought out things. I don't have a problem with the variances from the DP guidelines. I think we're starting to see them again and again, and the material palette I think is suitable for our climate. And as long as it's articulated and we have some shadows, I think it's going to be quite nice. For me.
Great, thanks. Sarah?
Okay, so my comments, contrary to Chris, actually, is I actually like that there's spaces in between the bollards, because I think that that will allow somebody to travel from the accessible parking stall that's on Victoria and the Laneway, not to have to go through traffic to get out of that parking space. I think that the accessible stall on the level 1 parking should be flipped to the other side. Maybe you could put it where number 12 is, and looks like there's a little bit of space on either side. Maybe, I don't know if that would give you enough give to allow it to go there, but otherwise you're traveling behind quite a lot of parked cars.
Right, to move it adjacent to the elevator, to the lobby.
Yeah, closer to the elevator. It's always best. And yeah, all in all, I think the building looks great. I would just be a little bit concerned about what will happen to the white in the future, maintenance-wise. And also, yeah, that signage going on along that second level doesn't pollute what you designed. That's all the comments.
Great. Good. I think I'll just jump in too as it goes by me. Yeah, it's an interesting kind of maybe a fresh look at an architectural form and character for Squamish. I was trying to figure out where the inspiration is, and then I see it. It's the gold Volkswagen van. I thought the central core storage is a really interesting approach to a fat core building. That's a good way to use up that space, and I think everybody wants their bike close by, so just encourage you to make the elevator bomber so that it can handle that kind of activity. The parking, I kind of wrestle with it because I think it's going to become a big issue, but maybe we're going to teach people that they only need one car. The reality is those are all small spaces and there's only one per unit, and half the people in town have trucks, and maybe those people won't buy here. So maybe the product will bring in a certain type of customer, but I've had personal concerns about 10 or more % relaxation in parking for a building this size, especially if we repeat this all down the street. And then I guess if the district is taking cash in lieu, then they need to be planning what to do with that cash. I think the overall mass is a kind of an interesting mass. I don't see that it needs to step back there. I think the step backs and the punctuations in the facade achieve, I think, the intent of maybe those original DP guidelines. I'd like to see some roof access, and there was some talk of green roof. I think it's a big, massive building again, and what it could contribute back, you know, it has very little landscape, and what landscape it does, it's actually off property. So maybe the roof could, it doesn't have to be a cosmetic green roof, it could be a functional green roof that gives back a bit to the heat island. And Julian, your bike rack, I think, is just the ribbon rack. That's kind of a real old school bike rack. It looks really cool, but a bike rack needs 2 points to contact, or the bike slides down and falls over. And what happens is 2 people occupy the full length of that bike rack. So if the more modern racks that are give a single bike 2 contact points is more effective, I think. That's up to you, but yeah, I think I'd like to see a bigger gesture in the continuous canopy approach. That's my comments. Councillor?
Yeah, thank you. I really like the looks. It's a really nice looking building. Bike racks are looked after. I do really think it's a mistake not continually covering the sidewalks. And
Speak up, Ted, sorry. There's a saw behind me.
how we're working on it. Sorry. I'm just saying that, you know, I really like the continual covered sidewalks. You guys don't get the complaints that we get about snow removal. And anyway, I like the building. I could have some planters in the porches or the decks. Could have some little planters, put some green in there. you guys have mentioned parking, so I won't mention parking. Other than that, no, I think it's nice. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so to not repeat what our fellow members have said, to
You're
respond
allowed
to
to
some-
reinforce.
Yeah, reinforce. So I agree with the continuous canopy, because let's say if you had done that, then perhaps the residential canopy entry would be something different. So you're differentiating the residential and the commercial. So that's one thing. And in regards to setback, I don't have any issues. I think this is a corner piece. It's allowed to break some rules, and this is done tastefully, so I don't have any issues. I guess signage has been addressed, and I guess staff asked about the corrugated metal cladding. I find that to be very permanent, very modern, a contemporary approach. It should be embraced more. And I guess on my drive here from Vancouver to Squamish, the colors kind of pick up the mountains, so I think it's very appropriate. The white is there. We always have snow. I think it's great. It's good. So no issues here. What I am concerned about though is your unit C facing the neighbor. And I do appreciate that this is a rental building, but I'm concerned about the livability. It's a deep space with very few windows, so I don't know how you intend to address that. And obviously, I appreciate that you're, backing onto a neighboring property, but I think something else needs to be done. I know your client probably doesn't like that, but maybe you could step it back and just be a little bit more generous with the livability of Unit C. And finally, I think in general it looks good. The curve curls your eye around to frame the sheath. Since you already have an encroachment for the residential canopy, I'm wondering, would it be stronger if you winged that out a little bit more, like at the peak?
Or brought it out over the sidewalk.
Yeah, just at the top, just wing it out, and engineers will figure out how to cancel it. So those are my comments. Good project in general.
Sir, can I just clarify one of your comments? You had a comment about a setback allowed to break the rules. What did you mean by that?
I'm saying, I guess about the
third story setback.
Yeah, third story
Oh, I
setback.
see, yes, okay.
So I don't
So
think
you're
it's
okay with that?
necessary. It's for this site.
Great, thanks.
Sure, Mayor. Yeah.
I really enjoy what you've done. This is absolutely beautiful for me. I really enjoy it. A few things that I want to enforce. I think that the covered walkway should be all the way around. I think that there's a very big practicality in this town for that and the weather that we have here. I think the green roof is a very good idea just to, again, give back, and there's a lot of views that come down into the downtown core, and it can just make it a little bit softer. I think there should be very careful attention be paid to the parking, because we don't want to set a tone saying it's okay, and it just never stops with people on the variances of the parking. The same with the setbacks, although I will go with my colleague's opinion that it's okay for this site, and I am really enjoying the look of this building. A little bit of a concern with the fake wood on the metal, although I'm excited about having the material there that is not going to wear, so if it doesn't get chipped and scratched while it's installed, and hopefully it can look really nice for a very long time. I'm excited about that. Reiterate the color contrast, and I think it works where we are. The landscaping for me is really not enough, and so that puts more emphasis on repeating something on the roof. I don't think it's necessary to give it access to the public, but I think it will be a good way to give back. So. And then signage, I think very careful attention should be paid to the signage of the second story, the type of office users that we see there, and how are they going to have a visibility from the street? Because I think maybe that will work. Something that needs to be addressed in the signage bylaw. Because again, we're going to set a tone for things that's going to look like they're slapped on, or intention, or what the tone is and what the look is at night when things are lit up, and it can really change something that is very beautiful, and we don't want someone to put something really tacky on the outside of this.
Maybe Adventure Center.
Thank you.
Sorry,
Jenna?
could you just
Oh.
clarify your parking variance comment?
Yes, it's more a comment for the board to say we should be very careful to say, because if we're talking about the variance, when is it a good idea, when is it not a good idea, is there hardship here? That's what I just think that we should be very careful before we start saying it's okay for things like that, because otherwise it will just become the norm. I think it's exactly what you said.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment to that comment? So the we're looking for those extra commercial spots because we're responding to a request to have commercial on that second floor. Originally we had residential on that floor, which generates less parking, and we wouldn't need a variance.
Yeah.
So that's
And
kind of where that
I
is
know
coming from.
in the beginning of 2000, the developers had the same issue in Vancouver, where they had all these residential towers down, and Vancouver wanted to force them to put in commercial. And now there's a 5-year waiting list to get a commercial space in, so the commercial is going to be used. And, so we just want to make sure that we don't lose one aspect of this. I remember Portland once made the comment about, you don't give someone pants that is too small to force them to lose weight. And I will never forget that.
Really? I think I'm being misquoted.
And that was during the Olympic Village, and we were parking, and people today are screaming and yelling about parking issues.
Right.
there.
Yeah. It's
didn't-
definitely an issue.
It did not work. And so, yeah, that's where we are.
That's agreement.
Elaine, as I read the parking count, so there's 13 required on commercial. There's 6 provided and 4 in lieu, so it's still short. Is that the 3?
That's the 3.
That's the 3, okay, got it, okay. So it's, yeah, good. That's everybody's comments?
No, maybe Jen hasn't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
All good. I agree with a lot of the comments. I think this is a really lovely building. It has a very different character and still expressing the local character, which is really nice. I think the articulation of the facade on the street is a really interesting approach, giving it some movement, some softening the sidewalk a bit. In particular with the wood battening, I think that's going to be a really nice texture. I think the dark concrete as an expression as well, playing with the building, is a really nice play of the geometry. I think the basalt columns as this casual seating element was actually quite nice. I would give consideration to seeing if that is something appropriate to bring back into the project. I agree with the green roof. I think it would be a nice gesture to give back some more green, especially looking up at the top of the chief and what that would do from that view. I agree with the comments about the continuous canopy. I don't think it needs to be continuous in the sense of one architectural piece that's continuous, but at least it could overlap in a way that the pedestrian is maintaining that coverage. And then I guess it was more of a question, but I'll make it as a comment. But if there's I think I agree that with the durability of this product, it's really powerful. If there's a version of it with a bit more gap to allow a bit more of that articulation, I would give consideration to exploring that and seeing if it is in fact the correct route to go, or if this one is the right one. Overall, really exciting. Thank you for your presentation.
Can I get one more clarification?
Yeah, please.
I think I didn't understand that until you asked about the parking. So it is 4 cash in lieu stalls bought out, and they're not buying out the other 3?
No, so the So what's in the zoning bylaws, you can buy 4 stalls cash in lieu.
There's a max to it.
There is a max.
Okay.
And so what we're proposing is to vary that to be 7 stalls paid in lieu.
Oh,
So they are
Okay.
gonna pay
We're
for the
proposing
7
to vary that.
versus
position.
just relaxing.
versus just relaxing, so they are gonna pay for 7.
That's what's the staff proposal.
Okay, that's what I would support, so I'm okay with the commercial buyout, because I think the residential parking, with the amount of residential units going in downtown is probably more important. But as so long as there's cash equivalent that's gonna then go to a bigger plan for parking or something. So I would just reiterate I'd support it if there's 7 commercial stalls, cash in. If not, I definitely wouldn't support it.
I just have one more comment.
Yeah, please.
This may be more with engineering and then installing it, but just to make sure that the curb cuts with the tactile pads are actually in line with the crosswalks. Because like the new ones that we put in, right at the Dominant Medical Clinic, they're at an angle still, so they should be really in line with the direction you're traveling.
And these aren't.
These are.
No. That's a challenge when they're on the corner like that.
Yeah, because it sends you out in the
Yeah.
middle of the intersection.
Interesting. I have one more question
Yeah,
for
thanks,
staff.
Joe.
I guess this is more for Elaine. The site plan, all this chit chat about parking, kind of looked at this a little bit closely. 17 and 18, number 17 and 18 stalls. Are they actually usable? Did engineering, because of proximity to the access way, typically you would need a level of parking.
So you're saying they should be a little bit wider?
No, I'm saying whether or not they're actually usable, these 2 stalls.
Maneuvering?
Engineering, yeah, because normally you would wait that way, so has engineering reviewed?
I will highlight that
Yeah,
for
okay,
them.
good enough.
Thank you.
Sorry, usable and.
Because normally, you're so close to the access way.
Oh, to the, yeah.
Yeah, 17
okay.
and 18, so people are trying to back in, back out, and especially at the, accessible stall there. So I have a feeling you may not even be able to use those 2 stalls, in which case, a hardscaped area would be nice.
Is parking in that situation a 0 setback?
Is it 0 setback?
It looks like it is.
Yeah.
Oh, like
But is it allowed to be
lane?
0 setback?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know engineering doesn't like to see lots of entry and access points off of like a road or a lane, and so that was one of their initial comments, was even just having the 2nd floor ramp and the entry to the at-grade parkade. They were concerned about those 2 access points, but I guess we're working with a challenging small site, so it's hard to provide the parking, but we'll review that a bit further with engineering.
Okay, I think, there was a number of common themes that came up. I think everybody was happy to look for the relaxation on the required 3rd-story setback. The continuous canopy came up numerous times. Green roof treatment, not necessarily accessible by the occupants. I think, Cheryl, your point on unit, whatever that is, C, I think is a very valid point, and that should be explored, the livability of that unit. So based on that, would anybody be prepared to make one of our 4 typical motions? I don't need to read them out, do I, at this point, until we settle on one?
I think it's the.
Okay, so our 4 motions, the first one, A, is to support the project, and it does not need to return to see the project again. B, the advisory panel supports the project in general and would like the applicant to work with staff to resolve the following recommendations.
Yeah.
And C, the panel supports the project in general and would like the applicant to resolve the following recommendations and return to panel. So,
Make motion B.
B. So that's support in general and return and have work with staff. Yeah. And we've got a second by Chris. Okay, call a motion, all in favor? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Appreciate the comments.
So we'll resume our meeting on item 2, which is the waterfront lands sub-area plan and zoning amendments for 1500 Highway 99. the planners would like to introduce the project, that would be great.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to introduce Susan Stratus, who's the contract planner. She's working for the district in reviewing this file. And so Susan will present the file, and then we'll have the applicants at the table as well.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First time meeting the ADP, so I wanted to just start, preface my presentation by letting you know that this is pretty different than everything else you look at. We don't have any buildings, we don't have any landscape plans. This is still very conceptual. Behind the concept, however, is a solid plan that we've been reviewing and is technically sound, but there are no detailed building plans or anything like that. So I just wanted to kind of make that point that although we've tightened up the concept plan and the policy, the DP applications will be coming forward. That's part of our reason for bringing this to you ahead of time, is for you to become familiar with the whole approach to the neighborhood, so that when you start receiving the DP applications, you'll have that context and background. So the site is shown there in yellow on the slide. Oop.
Blow it up.
And what we're looking for today is to give you the overview of the development and also to get your feedback on the new design guidelines that are part of the new sub-area plan, because they're what you're going to be working with eventually. So the lands, it's 53 acres, a previous industrial site located directly west of Laurelwood Drive and east of the Mamcombe Line Channel, and it's also bounded by the CN rail line, also to the east. In the OCP, it's designated as part of the downtown, although it's physically separated from the downtown by the Mamcombe Line Channel. It has for some time been designated in the OCP as downtown, and so our challenge really is to make sure that it becomes truly part of the downtown. The site is a previous industrial sawmill site. It's full of contaminated soils and debris of all kinds, and so is the shoreline. The applicants have been working with the community over the past year to clean up the shoreline, and they have been issued a site alteration permit to deal with the contaminated soils on site, so that is underway. But, you know, it's really quite a mess in its current state. So we have been working on this since August when the application was submitted. We made an early presentation to the Committee of the Whole in October to introduce the project, a public information meeting in November that was quite well received. And over the past several months, we've been working mainly on internal staff review. A whole bunch of technical reports have come in, and the applicants have made a number of changes to the project on the site plan in response to all of this information and direction from council. We've also been preparing a new sub-area plan and DPA guidelines and the zoning bylaw for this project. So on March 7th, we went to the Community Development Committee to bring them an update of all that work. We met with the Squamish Estuary Management Committee in April. And earlier this week, May 2nd, Council did give first reading to the bylaws. There's a couple of things we still have to address, but we do expect to come back fairly soon with a second reading of the bylaws. So the technical reports involved an environmental assessment looking at the contamination and what kind of environmental values are on the site, water and sewer system analysis, a geotechnical report looking at soils and water table. A flood hazard assessment has been done to determine what the flood construction and setbacks should be against the Mamcombe Line Channel. A noise and vibration assessment was done to look at how to mitigate possible impacts from the CN rail line, and that resulted in some design changes to the road where a crash berm is being put adjacent to Laurelwood, and the applicants have reoriented a number of buildings to reduce possible impacts. A marine survey was done to see just where their property ends on the water side. A commercial demand analysis was also done. One of council's big issues was loss of employment from the previous industrial status and just how much commercial was going to be appropriate here. And there were some debates back and forth, and not everyone saw that exactly the same way, but we had a very interesting study submitted that supported 35 to 40,000 square feet of commercial on the site, more than the original 10,000 that the applicants started with. They have since increased that to 50,000 square feet of commercial on the site. So, you know, that's a fairly healthy amount of commercial for the neighborhood. And there was a traffic impact assessment done, which I won't get into, but, you know, obviously this is a challenging site to get into. So I won't spend too much time on the site plan because the proponents are going to walk you through that, but the site plan consists of a mixture of apartment and townhouse development. The previous sub-area plan that was done and the previous design for this property involved mainly 12-story towers centered around a large lagoon that was cut out of the property in the middle, and it wasn't a very feasible property. It never did develop under that plan, and the 12-story apartments were really very difficult to park because of the water table and geotechnical issues. So the applicants have purposely chosen to go into a more low-density format. If I can just get the marking here. There we are. What some of the outcomes of this site plan from the original submission are, we've got a very large waterfront park along the north edge of the site. There's a marine village here in the middle, which is one of the commercial areas, and we have a nice park at the south end of the site with views down the channel, and this will have a beach area where you can launch kayaks. There is a small 50 or so berth marina here that is going to be a public marina and opportunity for kayaking and small boat launching here. The cornerstone, I guess, of this whole project is really this physical connection to the downtown through a pedestrian bicycle overpass that will lift up to open. And we haven't got the details yet exactly how that's going to be managed. That's something that's still being worked on. And the road system, what we were looking for was this to be kind of a public place, not a project that cut out the the rest of the neighborhood. So the road system is actually quite important. These are public roads that run through in a loop system, take you down to the waterfront and provide a loop back out. There's 2 points of access on Laurelwood. There are 3 apartments, 2 here at this entrance, and this one contains the additional office space and the affordable housing. So this is probably the only true mixed-use building on the site. The other commercial building in the village area is meant to be purely commercial. So I'll leave it at that so the applicants can describe it in more detail. 50% of the site is being used for townhouses, but that accounts for about 60% of the housing units. 300 apartments use up only 10% of the site. Kind of shows you the beauty of going up instead of out. There is a fairly good amount of parks between strata parks and public trails, 19% of the site, 16% to roads, and 5% to commercial and amenity uses. And just again, I've mentioned those parks. Aside from the major 2 public parks, one of the design changes that happened as we were going through our review of this, originally we had some little scattered bits of landscaping here and there through the multifamily areas. Those have been consolidated to a great extent to provide kind of more meaningful park areas within the development, so people have places to gather and kids to play instead of just kind of these bits of landscaping at the end. And the amenities I have mentioned, I'll let the applicants go into this. So the policy framework, there is already a waterfront landing sub-area plan. It was never built out. It was adopted in 2007. So with the applicants, we've prepared a new sub-area plan that's going to be adopted as an OCP amendment. The sub-area plan is part of the OCP. And we've revised the CD40 zone, which was originally very specific to the previous development proposals, and now we've created a new CD40 zone effectively that describes the new approach to the project. Both of these documents, the new ones, are much shorter than the other ones, probably about a third of the length of the previous sub-area plan. And I think when this was done in 2007, Squamish was really just going through that change from industry to other types of uses, and there was a lot more background went into that because of just the times were different. I think there's more acceptance of downtown development now. So the sub-area plan contains a vision for the neighborhood, sustainable planning principles, your normal range of land use policies for the different land uses, and infrastructure policies to deal with transportation, geotechnical, flood protection, and so on. So the CD40 zone, one thing we're doing a bit differently here, instead of having a whole site zoned CD40, we're going to show these as P3 zones so that the public parks are clearly public. They often get lost in CD zones. There's a whole bunch of public land hidden in CD zones, so going to zone that P3. There is a small part of the channel where the marina is that's currently in your industrial 3 zone that is being brought into the CD40 zone to accommodate the marina. And there is a concurrent application to Crown Lands to get to tenure over that. And the CD40 zone looks roughly like the land use plan. It describes permitted uses and regulations for each parcel. There is some flexibility built into the zoning bylaw. There's a total of 865 units proposed under the current plan, but the zoning bylaw does allow that to go up to 1,000 because over the fairly long build out of this project, things change, markets change, and the policies actually encourage the development to bring more apartments in against this hillside here. There's a very, very steep bluff here, so it's a perfect place to go higher. So if that happens in the long term, the plan and the zoning bylaw support that. Well, just moving on to the DPA guidelines, the development permit area covers the land and the part of the water and shoreline area. And as I was drafting these, it's a bit awkward because your new OCP is currently being drafted, and that includes some update to especially your downtown guidelines. And I think probably from the Wild West 1970s, they kind of look like Williams Lake. But I think what I've tried to do here is mesh with where your new guidelines are going, so that there is more mandatory language and a consistency in how it's set up in the new OCP. So there's 4 main parts to these DP guidelines. The first is general design and site planning, deals with neighborhood character, preserving views, waterfront setbacks, pedestrian circulation, paths, trails, lighting on your trails, parks and play areas, the need for them in close proximity to the residential areas, landscaping, sustainable design, parking and loading. The residential and mixed-use guidelines provide a bit more specific direction on those land uses, focusing on the relationship to the street, building height and massing, the typical things, and I'll read this, that you are concerned with at the ADP. And residential livability is a fairly important part of these guidelines, making sure that the privacy and common areas, that there's a good balance between those. The Marine Village and public realm, there's a lot of photos of that and drawings in the package you were submitted. I'll let the architect, the applicants deal with that, but they're really looking for this to be the focal point of the neighborhood with a distinctive, strong architectural character. The commercial needs to have a really strong connection to the street with public spaces and outdoor seating, weather protection, just dealing with that. And also to look at reflecting the industrial heritage of this site at the marine setting. And lastly, the Mamkund Blind Channel is the 4th part, the environmental best practices for any uses along the along the Mangrove Blind Channel. We're looking to use Green Shores principles as much as possible. And one of the things with this site is it doesn't have the same degree of flood hazard as the other part, the main part of downtown, which has resulted in the sheet piling dikes that are being constructed for flood reasons. On this side, there's more opportunity to do more of a Green Shores approach. Now, we're not, again, at the detailed design stage, but certainly much more is possible on this side than on the other side of the channel. The guidelines aim to put the marine uses in the previously disturbed parts of the channel and to address habitat as well as flood protection, which means a minimum 15-meter setback from the Topic Bay for any buildings. So just to conclude, this is where we are in the process. We're right at this red dot at the start. We've given first reading only to these bylaws, the sub-area plan and the zoning amendment. So those bylaws need to go through there. We're hoping to get second reading on June 6th, public hearing in July, and possibly adoption in early fall. An important part of that before adoption is the land development agreement, where we secure all the various commitments that have been made here, all of the amenities that are described. And after that, the bylaws will be adopted. We do expect a development permit to come in. The district process allows people to come in with a development permit prior to those bylaws being adopted at their own risk, just to get the process going for their first phase. So I do expect the applicants might be coming in prior to the bylaws being adopted, which means relatively soon, and that's part of the reason we're meeting here today. And then finally, the district needs to do a servicing agreement about how the construction and installation of services will go. So I think I'll just end mine here and have the applicants come up and walk you through their approach to the project and go from there.
Do we, before you do that,
Oh, yes.
do we, because we're being asked to kind of comment on the DP document, which hopefully most of us have read before this, because thank you for the highlights there. And then we're going to be commenting on the applicant's response to that DP. So do we want to discuss the DP now?
Sure.
Or
The guidelines we can discuss now. If I wasn't sure if people have had a chance to read them or not. I think the only benefit to having the applicants go first is it gives you a fuller understanding of how this might play out, and we can then come back to the guidelines.
Okay.
Your call.
Any thoughts on that? My thought was that like if we agree and think that the DP guidelines are a sound document, then it makes sense that the applicant responds appropriately to that. But if there's items in the DP document that we think maybe are missing or are conflicting, then we don't want the applicant to wear that. You know what I mean, or respond to something like that. But that's my thoughts. I'm happy to go straight to the applicant, and then we'll deal with it all at once at the end.
There's nothing stopping us from discussing it now, before and after.
You know, or it's just how the comments are directed after, you know, whether it's directed at the applicant's kind of interpretation of those or directed.
Yeah.
I wouldn't
So-
mind a bit of a reality of how it's going to play out,
Sure.
and then I think we could maybe have two clear discussions, one at just DP and one at.
Okay, so let's, at the end, let's make our comments directed to the appropriate applicant. Okay, thank you very much.
Maybe move over here and keep track.
Welcome to ADP. If you don't mind introducing your team, that would be great.
Sure. Just pull up our PowerPoint here. Oops.
Thanks for seeing us today. My name is Ben Duffel. I'm with Goza Properties. And this is Kim Perry from Perry & Associates, the landscape architect and master plan guru for the project. It's a lot to wrap your head around. I know, believe me, we've been living this reality over the last 8 months to a year. There's a ton of moving parts on this project. We've just been working with staff kind of on a bi-weekly basis, going over the pieces of the plan, kind of negotiating out each one, and we're pretty happy with where we've, well, I shouldn't say where we've ended up, the current state of the plan. Some of the stuff that's in our presentation here is repetitive. Susan's done a great summary, so we'll go through some of the stuff that we think is just a rehash. I was going to start by just giving you a bit more of a picture of where the site's come from, where it's at now, and then Kim can walk you through the vision for the site. So let's get going. And of course, the site itself, there's Highway 99, CN rail line, Mamquam line channel, downtown Squamish, and the site right there, and immediately adjacent to it. This is how it looked about a year ago. You can see there's still some, there's a barge out front, a number of structures. There's a bunch of pilings, kind of remnants from the industrial past of the site. There was a big cleanup effort that we participated in. There you go, there's some great shots from the previous, that's what it looked like last year. So it was a massive effort, a joint effort with ourselves, the district, province, Streamkeeper Society, Squamish Tug, the Squamish Nation, basically to remove all of those piles, move all the boats and structures and trucks and excavators and hazardous waste and whatnot that were on the site, and then basically clean up the shoreline and get our remediation program underway. So currently, we've done some pretty extensive drilling and categorizing of what's on site. There's a number of piles of wood waste, boulders, garbage. There's a couple of old mill buildings on the site. There's a couple of areas that were excavated previously and used, I believe, when they were constructing the highway. So we're going through the motions now of classifying these materials in order that we can move them and dispose of them or reuse them appropriately. As Susan was saying, we do have a site alteration permit received, and we're looking to get going on site within the next few weeks here. So that'll be an exciting step for us, is to actually see progress on site. So with that, I will I'll pass it over to Kim.
Thanks, Ben. So the first image is sort of reinforcing what Susan said, which is we see there it is. We see that our site is kind of a part of the downtown, that it's kind of two parts of one space. So that was kind of what we put on the table when we very first started our work. And the challenge, of course, was you're going to have a sort of a strong emotional attachment between the two, but what's really needed is a physical attachment. So the design team proposed this, which is the pedestrian bridge. So after a few discussions with our clients, it was agreed that that was a good thing to do, to really reinforce this notion of it being two parts of one idea. And so,
I could just click the button, I think.
No.
This one is.
So, is it right here? Okay, so there's a series of bullet points, which I think what I'm going to do is just go through them quickly, but then just kind of talk about the plan. How do I go backwards? Okay.
Darn PCs, eh?
Yeah, I'm a Mac guy.
That's obvious.
There you go. Yeah, so what this image is dealing with is kind of site access and core structure, and I'm going to linger here for just a little bit longer to talk about some of the some of the ideas of the plan. So what's needed in order to make this project work is an access from the highway. So that occurs here over to Laurelwood. And as Susan mentioned, there are 2 site access points. The primary access point is this one, which brings everyone down through the core of the site and across the pedestrian cycling bridge over and connects onto Victoria. And the public road system, as she described, is in this area. So there's kind of a figure 8 with this appendage, which comes over and connects to the north, or sorry, to the south end of the site. The idea behind the development of this site plan was to create smaller sub-neighborhoods within the overall neighborhood of the project. And so through discussions, there have been many, many iterations of this plan. Susan's group had, as she mentioned, given us input that the green spaces needed to be more sort of cohesive and connected. So what we've done is provided a green space, sort of a publicly accessible green space in each enclave or each neighborhood, sub-neighborhood. So there will be some slides in a few minutes that kind of show how it all fits together and breaks it down into its component parts. But when we sat down with the team, we decided to kind of design the green space system work first, and then make the rest of it kind of fit in amongst that. So we have a kind of a perimeter of green. We have 2 major waterfront parks, and what I think all of us recognize right at the very beginning is that the biggest asset of this site is its waterfront setting. So the objective of all of the corridors, all the green corridors in the public realm, is to bring everyone to the waterfront in an easily understandable, legible, cohesive way. So what you'll see then is a whole series of these green corridors. Some of them are more prominent than others, but wherever you are on the site, you can find your way very easily and clearly to the waterfront and to the village center. So the next 3 or 4 images describe the village, which is kind of the centerpiece of the project. So what you're looking at is a view from the downtown obliquely, and seeing the village core right here with the road coming down from Laurelwood, and the enclaves surrounding that, and with all of the corridors coming down to the waterfront. What you're seeing on the left here are some images of drawbridges, which are European examples of ideas for different ways of doing this. And so we're sort of in the research stage now, and it looks like there's a feasibility study underway, and it looks like it's possible to do this. This is a view looking from the bridge into the village, so you're seeing the sort of the character of some of the waterfront buildings that would exist in the village piece, sort of arriving across the bridge into the main village. And there's an oblique view of it there. These are some examples, some imagery, precedent images of the kinds of things that we might see in the village, with the marina, the canoe and kayak rental, potentially restaurant sites, cafes that could have a strong relationship to the water, and the kinds of structures that might sit on the waterfront edge. This is sort of a plan, a zoom in of the village component that shows the waterfront walkway moving through along the edge, and potential for some commercial activity in here, an amenity structure for the project here, a public plaza, and canoe and kayak launching here, and a small marina in this location. Small parking lot, surface parking lot here. There would be underground parking underneath the commercial building. So this is a description of some of the, it's kind of hard to see this. Is it possible to dim the lights a little bit?
That's better.
That helps. Yeah,
Thanks, Kelsey.
that was fast.
Yeah.
So, so you can see the sort of some of the waterfront spaces. Here's the large waterfront park that Susan mentioned, and the second waterfront park over here, and then there's a sort of a circulation system, a primary route that comes down here and connects everything together. We also see small playgrounds, children's areas, and some examples of the kinds of things we might see. So here you're seeing circled in red some of the green spaces. So this is the primary pedestrian route that brings people through the sort of the center of the site to the waterfront park. There's a continuous walkway for cycling path that connects around the perimeter of the site, and all of the small vest pocket parks that you see throughout the project are all connected up. And the idea too is that the townhouses would have these strata roads. They'd all be left open, so the projects aren't allowed to block off routes, so the site is very permeable, and so people can walk down the paths in between the units. Like here, I'll show you an example in a minute, but in between the units, and then on the car side, the road side, those would also be open for walking and used by the residents. And currently, we're showing a second playground over here, right in here. This is a sketch showing the northern waterfront park that I mentioned. So the idea would be there's some existing trees in there that we probably try to thin out a little bit to create some openings for the playgrounds. And this gives you a sense of some of the detailing we'd be looking at, sort of slightly more rustic detailing. We don't want to come in here and sterilize this place. We see that it's kind of a rough and ready waterfront, and keeping with Squamish and the history of the site, we'd like it to be to maintain that character. So what you're seeing here, maybe go all the way through the end then, is this is how our system, the red, links up with the Squamish systems. So these are the trails off the city's website showing where they are now and how we would be linking into them. So across this bridge, this new bridge, across here, and then and those trails would be continuous. This might also influence the design of those future trails in areas off of our site. So the roads, we've taken great care in the design of the roads as well. The main road has 2 3-meter wide pedestrian cycling zones, one on either side. We call that Road A for now. And
We may change that.
yeah. And Road B, which is the second one, is everything else, all the other public roads, and they would have a 3-meter wide path on one side only, and a pedestrian path on the other side. So all of the roadways would have pathways on both sides. So this is an example of kind of this is a good shot of an example of the kind of of landscape treatment we're thinking of that would be appropriate for these zones behind the building. So it's kind of a pattern of a strata road providing access to the driveways, to the townhouse units, and then in between the pairs of units would be a publicly accessible pathway that would move through there, providing access. These would have patio spaces, and this is kind of seen as the front door. So it's like a green street without cars on it. This side, there would be pockets for planting. And at the ends of some of these streets, there are opportunities for toddlers and that kind of thing to be able to play there. We'd locate them so that they're convenient for everybody. Just kind of, you go out for a walk and can stop within the project and at the edges of the project. This is an example of a project my firm did in Chilliwack called Garrison Crossing, which has a street, like a walkway cycling corridor, which is similar to what we might do here. This is an example of public gardens. Where possible, we'd like to include rainwater treatment and rain gardens. This is an example of UBC that we did, showing the kinds of planting that would be appropriate for that, and of course lots of cycling trails everywhere. Recognizing Squamish is a huge cycling community, we really want to play into that. So this is that same or similar photograph, and this is an example of the spaces between the buildings that we might see. The kinds of more rustic detailing rather than everything being really refined and finished. The planting would be, probably not hedges, but grasses and that kind of thing, and a good relationship, sort of social, public relationship between the patios and those walking down those paths, which is a kind of a really nice relationship to have.
Thanks. Yeah, this is our summary slide, just a few of the benefits. So you rehabilitate and re-envision the brownfield site immediately adjacent to downtown. The thing that first attracted us to the site is that proximity and the ability to leave your car at home and walk 5 minutes to the pub. I mean, that's what life's all about, really, isn't it? And along the way, the waterfront, the ground-oriented housing, which will come in a variety of different shapes and sizes. It's big enough that you've got to cater to a wide range of demographics. So that's kind of in process at the moment. Of course, the village core, we're excited to see how that will develop and really complete the site. So that's it.
Great, thank you very much. So yeah, let's see how the questions go. If it's specific to design guidelines, then maybe try and direct it that way, and the other to the applicant. So Chris, do you want to start? We'll go backwards.
I have a list here, so I'm not sure if it can be a bit of a round table discussion.
Well, it is, obviously, this is a very high level,
Yeah.
so we should keep it.
So I'll start and just stop me if I want to speak or cut me off. I'm a little curious how you kind of started the whole presentation saying it's very much a part of downtown, and in my head I see it as quite a different piece historically, and because it hasn't been accessible to the public and the community ever in my younger life. So I wonder if there's some important value to differentiate it. I think downtown's starting to see a very quick type of development, and there's always this wrestling between residential and commercial, as much as the communities or the district's trying to push downtown being the commercial core. I don't know if it's going to develop in that way. So I was a bit surprised to see the percentage of commercial space and the lack of percentage of mixed use space. I feel like it's really important in this type of walkable neighborhood to allow and encourage different grains of commercial activities, rather than a commercial center, which I get makes sense down at the waterfront where people gather. You know, I want to walk to my corner bistro in neighborhood Y over here, and then I ride my bike down to the little bakery down by the park. So that was one, I think, that it's important we have the opportunity to ingrain multiple levels of flexibility for commercial use. And I know this is going to be an organic development as it happens, so I think the more flexibility, the better. We're going to see every project come through. So planning, and that's going to be a lot of projects, so I think to give more flexibility, the better on the commercial front.
Sorry, just let me interrupt, Chris. Are we gonna do kind of questions first?
Are we?
In our-
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, I have a few,
I
but
can.
should we do that,
Sure.
stick with our format?
Okay. Can you, let me pick. Yeah, maybe speak to that. Speak to the vision of the grain of commercial space. How do you see commercial space developing on multiple levels? I'm not sure.
Well, I'll just take one stab at it, and I guess, I think there was direction from council early on to accommodate offices, and that seemed to be kind of the real thrust of the direction, was to make sure there was office space to kind of complement what was downtown. And to be honest, we've had quite a bit of debate internally about what level of commercial is here. Should it all be downtown? Is this competing with downtown? We've had been back and forth on that, and I guess the study that was done, really kind of reinforced that, this area can support more than a corner store and a pub. There ultimately will be need for it, but I guess one of the things I didn't talk about, and maybe should have, is the role of Laurelwood Road. And in the long term, Laurelwood Road will need to cross Mancroft Line Channel to provide another connection downtown, and that started to really reshape how we saw this neighborhood too, because it's going to be a really busy traffic corridor. It's going to be the second main entrance to downtown, so the kind of pedestrian scale and comfort level along that corridor changed quite a bit once we realized the role that road was going to play. But to be honest, I think we were so focused on kind of responding to council's concern about office that we haven't looked at dispersing commercial elsewhere in the site and whether that's workable or not. I'm just going to take that under advisement at this point. I mean, I guess because the policy is not in place, it's relatively easy to add a changed policy to allow it to be elsewhere.
I think it goes hand in hand with the architectural typology, so I wonder why you've chosen the townhouse typology to be the correct
I'm going to
housing
direct that
type.
to the applicants,
Because
actually.
that usually, in my experience, limits the amount of commercial you could build into it long term, whereas the apartments.
Well, it's a balance. I mean, the previous scheme, they had a bunch of concrete towers on the site, which is just not feasible.
Yeah.
It's our view that there's a real demand for ground-oriented housing, especially with young families, people who are a few years away from having children, people who are maybe in a single-family home right now and want to downsize into something, but they don't want to leave the community, but they don't want to live in an apartment. So we've tried to strike a balance between providing that ground-oriented housing in a variety of forms. So a smaller, say 1,200 square foot home that with 2 beds that might work for a single person, a young family, and then they would get larger from there. There's a few duplexes on the site as well, and then a variety of home sizes within the apartments as well. So we're assuming that there's 5 4-story buildings right now with some flexibility to go up to 6, but we don't see it as a really high density. Or we think there's a limit to the number of people that would want to live in apartments on a site like this, so we've tried to strike that balance.
Can you speak to the general parking strategy, which is a big question, I know, but more
Sure.
like visitor parking, less so to do with the buildings, but I think it's going to be attract a lot of highway traffic, so can you just speak to a general strategy you're trying to accommodate that with?
Do you want to touch on that, Susan, or do you want me to?
I'll just, from our perspective, I guess that was part of the reason of having a public road structure rather than stratas, which are so narrow. So these are good-sized public road right-of-ways. They have pedestrian and cycle facilities off the road. The road is strictly cars, and those main roads also don't have any driveway access. There's no garages facing those main public roads also. So the parking on the main streets, on all of those public roads, is going to be nodes of public parking. I think there's 200 parking spaces provided, public on-street parking. And the applicants have not asked for any variances to the parking, so the zoning bylaw meets, the CD40 zone meets the bylaw standards and actually exceeds it in some ways. They're proposing to provide 2 units, 2 spaces per townhouse unit. There's a minor variance in the visitor parking for townhouses only, a very small variance, but it's more than compensated by the additional parking that's being, the 200 spaces that are being provided on the street. So I think we've got a pretty good supply of public parking.
What about at the main node? So let's say the 3 main parks, the one on the south end, the one on the north end, and then the commercial
We
zone.
haven't got to that level of design. You know, that's something we're going to have to look at again. This is a broad concept plan, but
I think
it's a
that's
really
an
good
important
point
draw,
because
yeah.
I believe that southern park in particular is going to be the preferred location for kayak launching. So, you know, when we get down to the detailed park design and that phase of development, that's when we will be looking at that.
One thing you'll notice is, despite the amount of commercial on site, there's very little surface parking lot. So we started looking at, you know, marinas require parking. Commercial areas, retail areas require parking. Second floor office, you know, parking. So we started with ground level parking, which is the, I think, say, least expensive way to do it. And just putting ground floor parking along the waterfront just doesn't make any sense. And that's why we've split the commercial. We wanted to keep a small scale village feel to that, to the commercial center. So we've limited the commercial there to there's 20,000 square feet there with underground parking. So I mean, it's much more costly, but we're going to try, because we're filling the site up, we can actually go underground and still stay above the water table. So that apartment building at the waterfront, along with this, find my house. There it is. There's an underground parkade here to park the commercial. So you go down a single ramp and then split to serve those 2 buildings. And then each of these buildings as well would also have underground parking. So we're making a conscious effort to, you know, keep the parking lots to a minimum. And part of what lets us do that is the fact these are public roads with parking all along.
This is a very walkable community too. A 100-acre site, perfect circle, would be a 5-minute walk to the middle. So this is half of that. So everyone on this site can reach the waterfront probably in about 4 minutes or something, walking and cycling, you'd be there.
And I think that is a really good point about needing some parking back up to serve those 2 public parks. So that's a good point.
I'm sticking on vehicles, this will be my last question, so that's got lots to
Yeah,
say.
yeah.
But maybe you can just focus and elaborate a bit on the connection to Highway 99, the Laurelwood connection. What scale those are going to be? Is there any upgrades needed at Highway 99 that's coming across? And then also how that interface, i.e. the backup if a train's coming across, or maybe that's too focused, but just has there been some upper level thought?
Yeah, there actually has been a fair bit of work done in the traffic study, and so that I have a hard time doing this without a mouse, but so I do that. Get from here to the left hand.
A little bit of slack
Off
slack
the
there.
screen.
You've got some slack there. You want to use your other hand?
You're still on the screen. You go move it over.
There it is.
Move it over to the screen.
Oh.
Move it over which way? Okay, sorry about that. The traffic, we had a very in-depth traffic study done because access, I cannot do that. Okay, so the main crossing from Clark Drive goes over the rail. So it's a grade separated overpass, so Right now, you've got the traffic light at Clark Drive on the highway, and people go up to Valley Cliff. So that'll become a full interchange with a traffic light. It'll be a 3-lane road crossing over the rail tracks. So this will be a huge improvement for people wanting to walk from other neighborhoods across. So that's probably the most important part of that, is it'll be a rail crossing. CN wouldn't allow this development to proceed without an overpass, so that's kind of the big expensive upfront infrastructure for this development. And then you go down Laurelwood. Again, there's all of these things have bikes and pedestrian facilities, and then you distribute in, and ultimately Laurelwood is intended to extend to the downtown with a new bridge.
And that's a vehicle and pedestrian bridge, probably?
Oh, yes, yeah, 3 traffic lanes and full bicycle and pedestrian lanes.
And is that tie, sorry, is there a Laurelwood on this side of the water that's tying into, or what's it tying into downtown? Because it doesn't exist today, right?
Nothing yet.
But what will it tie into?
It will tie into Pemberton
Okay.
eventually, and that bridge crossing is not something that's being assigned to this development. The traffic study crunched all the numbers and found that this development is roughly 20% of the total usage of that bridge. Most of the future usage of that bridge comes from the oceanfront development, and there's quite a lot of other development going on downtown. So this is actually a fairly minor component. So the way the district is going to handle that bridge crossing, it's going to become a district initiative that will be paid for through DCC funds, so that all developments contribute, rather than having it fronted by this development that is only a part of that.
Great, thanks, I'll stop there.
Sarah, please?
No question.
Okay. Is there a traffic circle plan for the middle node there, or is that a
No.
4-way stop, or?
It'd be probably right at the village,
Yeah, right in the middle of the
just before the village.
figure 8 there.
Oh, right there. No, that's just a normalized intersection.
Stop condition,
Yes.
can be stop 4 ways.
I'm not sure whether the through traffic would be allowed to go through without a stop.
Okay.
I would think coming into it this way,
Right.
there would be stops.
Okay.
But I don't know. I don't.
We're not at that level of design yet.
Yeah, okay. And your phasing of this whole site, like, what's the first phase? Your road's gonna be in
Sure,
there at
there's
Clark
a
Drive?
phasing diagram in the back of the design
Okay.
guides, if you've got your, actually the very last page.
It's the guidelines.
On the guidelines.
It's the sub-area plan, it's actually a schedule to the sub-area. Oh, they don't have the full sub-area plan, they've only got the guidelines.
Okay. Am I allowed to do that without
Yeah.
getting, this is the phasing plan. Okay, well,
Need an open.
so the challenge on the site is access. So before you can build or occupy any home on the site, there needs to be the grade separated overpass, an upgraded Laurelwood, a new sanitary station built with connection across the channel, a number of road infrastructure, so that not to mention cleanup of the site and filling of the site. So there's a massive infrastructure investment before anyone can move into the site. So our intention is to orient this according to the way you guys are looking at it, is to start with this section closest to Laurelwood. So that would be right where road B kind of wraps around. It would
When you
be-
get the mouse working, can you be circle it?
Yeah, let's do it that way. Be this section here. And then we would build out to the water. So this side of the site, the south side of the site, it is more heavily contaminated than the north side, which is one of the original concepts why the main drive kind of bisects the site. It's going to take longer to decontaminate and process this site. So we need to start with the north side, and we wanted to start out here on Laurelwood. So the first phase would include this, Laurelwood, and these townhomes, and then we would build into this section and this part of the park, and continue from there.
And I'll just mention related to the phasing, we do, if you go online, actually all of this background material is online. And the bylaw, which is the sub-area plan, is on the council agendas. If anybody wants it, we can send it to you. But the phasing plan was actually one of the things that council had some concerns with on a meeting earlier this week. The challenge is that they want to see the pedestrian bridge right away. And I guess from the developer's perspective, that's not, it's a financial consideration because they've got all the other upfront costs, but it's also a practical consideration of taking people through a construction site. You know, you want to have a safe route for people to do that, and that doesn't emerge until you've moved your actual development down to the waterfront. So the BOSA is just working on that now. We're going to go back to council in a couple of weeks with trying to move that bridge forward. It can't realistically be built up front, but to try and bring it forward sooner in the scheme.
Because it would otherwise be built at what phase?
Right now it's in the middle, I think, at the same time as the apartment and the commercial area, because they share an underground parking structure. The idea was to build those all at the same time, to land the structure for the bridge and do that kind of village area all at once. So it's technically a challenge to put the bridge in first before that other area is built.
Well, we're looking at, I mean, how do you build the bridge and then excavate and build a parkade next to a bridge that's already been landed with people accessing it. So we're looking to see how feasible that is right now. The original intent was to get some people living on site before you activate commercial space. Otherwise, it's just dead commercial, waiting until you get a certain critical mass. And then build out the town core and the bridge in at that time, so that it all kind of lands together. You get, opening day for your retail, your office, the bridge is ready as well soon afterwards. But we're gonna listen to what council had to say and then see what we can do about it. Ted's smiling down there.
Yeah.
It's not my turn yet.
And like flood protection and stuff, do you have to raise the site a whole bunch?
We did.
Or?
Yeah. So there's most of the site will be filled.
Yeah.
There was a preliminary flood protection, the flood hazard assessment report done, which we received a bunch of comments back and we're revising now. That should be ready within the next week or two here. And that'll include recommendations on foreshore design. So we've also got geotech and civil and landscape looking at how we can retain that fill but also apply green shore principles to some, if not all, of the waterfront.
That's my questions.
Okay.
I just want a bit of an addendum to that. I mean, a good half of this waterfront is actually going to be public land. So, we can suggest programs for those areas, but we need to hear back from the district, from interested bodies and parties as to what those spaces should be, before we design them.
And the idea is that those parks get transferred to the district both as land and as a finished park area. So we don't just get a piece of raw land that nobody ever has any money to develop. It will be transferred and built out as a finished park.
I'll continue with questions. Housing, is there a component of social housing or affordable housing, and where is that in them?
The affordable housing is in the apartment on Laurelwood, the red one, and that's actually proposed for phase 3 of the development. There's 50 units of non-market housing that will be secured in perpetuity in that apartment building. So that's the social housing component, and that meets the district's standards. We're looking for 5% of affordable housing within the site. The
Just 5%?
That's the
Wow.
district policy.
Okay.
Our
Okay.
policy is currently evolving, so we're started with 5%. It might go up as our community amended contribution policy gets defined.
Okay. In the design guidelines, and I don't know if it's, this came first or the design guidelines, but when I first looked at it, I found the one big apartment building down on the waterfront seemed to stand out oddly, and now I understand a little bit more why it's there, that underground parking component, and I guess density, but it seems to really stand out in what's a relatively low-scale development, and then the rest of the apartments are at the back of the site. Why is that there?
Direct that to the.
Well, it's part of what you said, is there's a practical aspect to it, but there's also an interest in having some variety on the waterfront. In the northern end, there are duplexes, and then there are some townhouses, and so the thinking was that if an apartment building, if it was appropriately designed, kind of with a marine motif, that it would be a good addition to the waterfront. So all those reasons kind of contributed to that
Okay.
decision.
I mean, housing and transportation is always a huge issue. How is this kind of blended into kind of overall transportation plan, busing? Is Laurelwood going to be a major circuit for regional bus, or what plans have gone in as far as transit goes?
Well, we circulated the project to BC Transit really early on, and, they make decisions on transit, not the district, it's run by BC Transit. But having them involved in the design up front is important. They were really enthusiastic about this project because they saw the potential, first of all, to increase bus service, basically from the Valley Cliff to downtown, dropping people off here who will use the pedestrian crossing. So they saw it as a real opportunity, but in terms of how frequent bus service will be or where the bus stops will be, that sort of thing, it's just premature to know
But
that.
will transit inform the design, so to speak, or are you just kind of conventional, throw in the bus stop? I mean, has any, both in all of the transportation planning here, like traffic calming and it looks like fairly traditional layout of streets, and I'm just wondering if we're kind of advancing the use of transit or just putting up a bus stop sign somewhere.
I haven't got that far, I guess. Well, by changing the roads to public roads, it's given a great deal more right-of-way width that can be used in a variety of ways. And, we have the right-of-way width, and how the district chooses to use that is going to be up to their transportation planners. And I don't know, Jonas, have you got anything to add to that? Because I think that's the main thing we've achieved, is getting wider right-of-ways. Laurelwood is very wide.
And also having the looping inside the site,
Right.
it will lend itself to the good circulation of buses. Where buses don't have to turn around anywhere, they can just stop at the waterfront and then keep going around the loop.
Good, okay.
And just maybe one more thing I forgot to mention is, in the zoning bylaw, we've put in an allowance for shared vehicles, and for every shared vehicle provided, the parking requirements can be reduced by 5 spaces, which is more or less what the city of Vancouver has been doing on some of their projects. So that again is built into the zoning, and hopefully it's something we see is getting some shared vehicles on the site.
And with the site to the south, I guess, the neighboring site, just shaded in green there, is there any thoughts on how those may or may not plug together in the future, or is it'll be similar approach as this one with its own entry roads, or is there any connections other than, I guess, greenway connections?
It's quite a bit of elevation difference between the two sites.
Is there? Okay.
Yeah.
There's an escarpment.
Okay,
sheer-
so that's
Okay,
so there's a real physical barrier there, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for my ignorance on that.
But Laurelwood Road will extend down to serve that parcel, so they will be connected that way, but yeah, it's just a sheer cliff
Oh,
on
okay.
the side.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. good. I think that was it for my questions. Councillor?
Yeah, thanks. On the DCCs, the DCCs will be paid neighborhood by neighborhood. So if we have a change in DCCs, the increase will go to the new neighborhoods, right? Like,
So yes, the DCC bylaw is based on the project, so if this would go in as a project, the rates would go up.
yeah, so phase one's one price, phase three might be another price?
It all depends on the density of each phase, so it's per, if it's multifamily, it's per square meter of development.
Well, I'm particularly thinking about the bridge and,
What funded?
you know, and that's a DCC bylaw project, kind of surprised me a little bit. I understand that, but we've got a lot of DCC projects. So anyway, I was just curious as to whether, if the increase in DCCs happened, this project would feel it, right?
This project would pay
Yeah.
for it, yes.
And then the Green Shores, I mean, the shore looks fabulous to me. What aren't you doing in Green Shores? What's not being done?
We don't have any detailed design yet, so we
Okay.
don't know exactly what it's
Yeah.
gonna look like.
All right.
The portion by the bridge, I would just mention, you know, where the bridge crossing is and the marina, just kind of a small portion.
Would be the commercial.
That's gonna need to be kind of reinforced in a more traditional way to make room for those uses, but the rest of the site certainly has opportunity for different type of treatment.
So you're not a boardwalk all the way along
Yes.
the north-south end?
Yes.
So that's all sheet pile?
No, it shouldn't be, because I guess one thing that's maybe not too clear is there's a dotted line down showing the navigable channel. You see where their marina is? That's the edge of the navigable channel.
Minor.
So there is room between the edge of their property out to the edge of the navigable channel for sloping to happen of the flood protection works. And that's, you know, again, it's not designed yet. I mean, this is a project that's only now at first reading, so, you know, so a lot of things still are to come, but there is room for, on the other side of the water, the flood hazard is much higher, and they don't have as much room to taper out, whereas on this side, the flood hazard is less. There is a scouring action at the outer part of the site that has to be dealt with, but we're still waiting for detailed design, and I think the message from the very start has been to try and use the softest treatments possible under Green Shores.
What we've envisioned is a soft condition on the south end and on the north end. In the middle piece where the red and the purple buildings are, that might be a slightly more vertical condition.
And so the tallest building is 6 stories?
Potentially.
We're planning for 4 right now, but left.
I never did mind the towers. When there was towers in there, I never minded them.
20 stories?
Well,
There was one that was 20.
it settled, everybody settled at 12. I never minded them. I thought, nice.
That's where the zoning bylaw, it gives flexibility. It does allow for them to go up to 6, and that unit count to go up to 1,000, so. And
Well-
to be honest, we would encourage that to go a little higher, except for the water.
Well, in the
building.
back. To Chris's point on the non having the bakery down near the park and the guy with the business over here, you know, because it's a phased development, all that stuff could come later. I mean, you know, in a 10-year period, so many things change. So, I mean, I don't see that. Do you see that as being a problem? I mean, there probably will be a corner store somewhere in there, and there might be a Chinese restaurant out near the affordable housing in there, you know. So, and then the last point that I have is the railroad bridge, and I brought this up already. Stopping the kids from going across that railroad bridge is, that's gonna be a real challenge, because for them to go to school, and, you know, I mean, if I was there and heading downtown, I would probably go for the railroad bridge myself. So I just thought I'd throw out the idea of a floating bridge there in the interim. till the road goes in. That's all for me, thanks.
Thanks.
I guess will this be a lead development? Because there's a piece about sustainability design, but there's no mention to any rating systems.
I think, yeah, the language is to an approved green rating system. I mean, we're looking at a build green right now, but it's a bit premature still in sort of designing new buildings.
Well, I mean, it's a policy that you put in place, is what I'm saying.
Susan, what is the OCP? Does the OCP talk to lead equipment?
No, I don't think so. I think your new one probably does, but I don't think right now. We put some broad language in, it's not in the design guidelines, it's actually in the policy part of the sub-area plan that this will be built to an approved green rating system. And we didn't pin it down to whether it's going to be LEED or something else. So I guess because we've got that broad policy, when the development permits come in, you'll have to hold their feet to the fire as to what rating system is used.
Well, I suspect that by the time we are done with the land development agreement, that will be determined what the rating system is.
That's it? Okay. I have two questions for you. The first one is, how many different companies do you see going into this commercial space?
Which we haven't kind of broken out and designed those buildings yet.
Based on the area that's available.
The commercial demand analysis report had a few suggestions. I don't have that list with me, Susan, do you recall? It was basically a laundry list of uses that might be supported.
So
one of the things that's been discussed with council is the need for dedicated second floor office space, which the building to the north along Laurelwood in particular would satisfy. So that entire second floor floor plate could be one company, could be two companies, could be three companies, and then commercial at grade, which could also be flexible for different uses. Flexibility is the key at this point.
Okay. Sorry, my second question is it's going to take me a little bit to get there, so just bear with me. And maybe put on your seatbelt. I'll tell you what I see here. I see this boulevard.
Is this a question?
Yes, this is
Okay.
a question. I promise this is a question. I see this boulevard that runs all the way over to where you have the beach. And it's really wide, and there's tons of landscaping, and there's people on skateboards, and there's people on rollerblades and bicycles and kids. And I see a low water feature, and it's a destination. I see restaurants, and I see shops, and I see office spaces, and I see everything from the guys who teach you how to do the paddleboarding to the kite surfing. I see all those types of shops there. I see a destination where the motorcyclists that go to the Starbucks next to Nesters come here. I see a destination where people at night will come from the other side, come here to go to a fish market, a market that's twice the size as the one in Granville Island. I see Emily Carr opening a satellite office here. I see a very experienced developer taking one of the best examples of a similar destination like Granville Island and putting it here and making it better. I see a destination of people in Vancouver that drive here to come to one of 20 restaurants to come and see. I'm going to sit there, it's open, there's lots of seating outside, it's beautiful, I can see the mountains. I'm outside of downtown. I see an unbelievable new addition to Squamish. Now let me tell you what I see here in front of me. I drive in Langley and 200th Street, and I go off 200th Street, and I see row housing that was done very nicely, and it's the same everywhere. I see a place that is not a destination. I see no reason for someone to come here. I'm going to come here the first time to come and look at it, and the second time will be by accident. And the first time I'm going to get a little bit lost because I don't, in all the streets, it's kind of the same until I think I drove past the commercial space somewhere there, and I don't really know where it was. I see such a good opportunity here to do something phenomenal, and I don't see it in front of me. So my question to you is, why is this not a destination development? Why is this a residential development that can be anywhere?
Well, I just disagree. I don't think it can be anywhere. I think it's very much going to be of this place. I think when you're in the village, I think it's appropriately sized for the site. I think there's a balancing act going on between the actual downtown core of Squamish and this site that we have to be aware of. We don't want to detract from the downtown core, we want to supplement it. So we do talk about the cross-pollination, but we also don't see this as a massive new commercial core.
Why?
Squamish has enough of it.
So you say Squamish has got enough commercial. Currently, you are supposed to, downtown is providing 20% commercial, and they're increasing that. There's things in place now to increase that. You guys are providing 5% commercial. This is a residential development. You say this is adding to downtown, or the two are talking to each other. Why would anybody in downtown come here other than to sleep here? There's one pub there. I'm going to go to that pub when I feel like going to that one pub. And maybe that's fine. Maybe this is what the town wants. Personally, I just don't see it. I just see so much potential. And like I say, I'm going to feel like I get there and then there's nothing really there.
Okay, we got,
My
good,
question was, why is
good
the
question,
destination?
okay. Any more questions?
No, that was my one big question.
Okay, and we can come back to that kind of discussion in the next round. Yeah, Jenna?
A lot of my questions have been captured. You spoke about the green shores, maybe the still underway. Do you have an idea of what the sea level rise elevations would be for that, or is that still in the works of the study?
It's part of the study.
Yeah.
They take the 200-year flood level, I guess it is, and there's a mandated setback from top of bank, which is 15 meters in the district. So we've met or exceeded that everywhere along the waterfront. There was a bunch of other more detailed comments that came back on the report that we're addressing now.
And when you say flood, you mean the flooding of the rivers as well as the rising of the sea? Yes. Using the term for both, or? Yes. Okay.
The flood assessment report, the district actually has standards that the flood assessment report has to contain.
Yeah.
Based on provincial standards, and that accounts for both rivers and sea level rise. The 1 meter is what the provincial projection is for, but you also need to plan for a 2 meter sea level rise. So their original flood study did meet those requirements. But that's a combination of fill and the shoreline treatment that will achieve that.
Okay.
Everyone covered all the questions.
Good. Okay, well, let's see what start back here and go into comments. Thanks, Chris.
I think everyone probably recognizes how exciting it is to have an experienced developer come in and take on a big infrastructural piece like this. So, and I know we're really high level planning right now, and some of the pieces are obviously financially intensive, like that connection I didn't realize was coming at the top of the hill. I thought it was more going to happen down below, so that's a great benefit, I think, to Valley Cliff, etc. I think my biggest challenge, which was my first comment and probably is echoed a little more passionately by Derek, is the typology of townhomes is so redundant in Squamish for lots of reasons. You know, financially as a development it makes sense and they sell like crazy and they're cheap to build, but it really makes for a singular type of neighborhood and they're not overly active or public streets. So as much as these are public streets, I think those streets should have higher density, more commercial, more activity, more of a reason to occupy them. Otherwise you're going to have fast moving traffic and everyone just turning into their Strata Street, parking in their garage and going upstairs. So I haven't, not sure how you deal with that. I think I would push for more density and more commercial throughout the site and especially on the perimeters. I think that the commercial area and that one apartment that Crossland brought up, sticks out like a sore thumb because it's surrounded by townhomes. If that waterfront was a commercial frontage, whether it's 2 to 3 stories like Granville Island or 4 to 6 like Olympic Village, I think that has way more value to the community and to this scheme. So people can occupy there, they can sit out on the pier, and we're seeing it kind of done a little bit on the other side of the channel in Moreau, and even there I think it's not enough. It's condos, condos, condos. So as much as I'm empathetic to the challenge of building commercial before they come to the density, I wouldn't want to see this amazing piece of land be townhomes. I think it's the wrong place for townhomes. I'd love to see, and again, I don't know if this comes through like the zoning, CD zoning, but more of a, and we've talked about it downtown, more of a block energy systems, maybe the wrong word, but a way of managing energy, water, street runoff in a cohesive way that is progressive and not, chucking I care less about the rating system than I do about something that's going to be less infrastructurally intensive. So something, water's obviously a major problem here, and all the kind of renderings, we always see these like beach scenes and beautiful streetscapes, but dealing with water and snow and how do we deal with street and living in this neighborhood in the winter, I think is a crucial component. I think the street width is it sounds like the district's that's a great leverage piece that you've got that width with the separated bike path. I'd love to see that developed in a progressive way and not see Jane Jacobs like section. Landscape architects might speak to it better than me, but a generic swale here and a bike path there. Like, is there something more we can do with that space? Like I always think about the one which is more in like, I don't know if it's Paris, but the pull-off lane and then the angled parking, so they have a separate boulevard for parking that separates pedestrians from the main street, and then I think that's a really crucial piece in these types of developments is what is the street section, and let's do something that makes sense for our community. I would love to see the affordable housing percentage increase, and I would love to see it on a more prominent location on the site. I know that's a challenge, but socially I think it's kind of a responsible thing is to permeate that affordability throughout the neighborhood and not say here's your token building. That feels, I don't know, a little offensive almost to me. I think the overarching concepts are good. It's hard at this level. They just feel fluffy to me. So because you can't get specific. So I think the major moves are good. The connections to downtown, the connection to Highway 99, the pedestrian bridge is great, but I'm sure it's going to be a major challenge for boat navigation and the size of it. There's a great little one in Hood River that's a little activated pedestrian bridge, and it works, but it doesn't have boats going through the channel. It's over the river. So I think that's an important piece the public's probably latching on to, and council members as well. I think that's probably got to be...
That's a requirement of the Coast Guard and navigable waters,
Yeah.
is to make sure that the boats can get through. So that's just another right requirement.
Yeah, I just wonder if it makes sense versus this connection might be equally as important or more important to Pemberton and into downtown. So I just hope it's really, really functional and thought out and not just something everyone sees. It's a hard one. I think I already said my 2 bits about more commercial fine grain opportunity. Whether you build it or not, that's one thing, but to allow the flexibility that if it's a townhome unit could be a live work in the future and could have a home-based business or a hair salon or whatever, I think it's becoming more common practice throughout towns. So,
Home-based businesses are allowed all through here.
yeah.
Squamish has pretty generous provisions in the zoning, so that's we did look at live work early on and realized the home business provisions allow for a great deal of that already.
Okay. And I think the other one that maybe you don't know is the FCL level and how that relates to living space. I think it's really crucial. We're seeing it throughout Squamish. I think it's really challenging to deal with these, lock block walls and fill and then parking and living above. And as much as we want ground access living space, we don't have it. It's really second floor and up, and it's really horrible for pedestrians. So I don't know if that don't just meet the FCL, but there's a way of bringing it up that we can have living at ground level, I think is crucial. So I'm sure there's smart people on your team to take
Do you
the
wanna speak to
consultants'
that?
input.
Well,
Describe
all
the
the townhomes will be at grade level.
Yeah.
And the section through the apartments, given where the FCL is versus the water level, we think we can come in at grade and go down ramp to parking.
So all this
So-
interior site will be at FCL height. Or,
Yes, it
Okay.
has to be. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it has to be.
so we won't have
It'll
that.
be slightly above it, you step, like your,
Okay.
the outdoor living area of the FCL.
Okay. So yeah, I think it's a really exciting project, and there's a lot to take in. I think some of the big moves are great, and the waterfront kind of contribution is great. I just think the scale and grain and typology of the architecture really is crucial moving forward, and the hard one to do. That's it.
Thank you, Chris. Sarah?
I'd like to mimic some of Chris's comments about breaking up some of the townhomes. I think there's some huge long blocks of, there's going to be these interior roads that are strata roads that are, you know, in some areas sketchy to get to where the trail is, so you're going to have to travel along those interior roads, and it's just not that friendly. And additionally, somewhere in here you've spoken about aging in place and adaptable housing. Well, you need to have single level housing, so it's got to be an apartment. You know, it's not going to be in a townhome. And so in that way, like if you're looking at people who are going to be downsizing, they're going to be going to an apartment, not to necessarily a townhome that has steps in it. You know, there can still be opportunities with community gardens, but yeah. Yeah, those are my main comments and concerns. Tag, you're it.
Okay. I'm a big paddler along the Mampam Blind Channel every day, and I'm excited about the opportunity in the south beach there and that little pocket beach by there. A bridge will be required. There's a marina north of the bridge, so for sure that's a great feature. I am worried about the circulation. I love that you can get around, but parking is going to be an issue here. It's too early in the stage here to give it too much contact. We need a lot more detail here, and you're getting through there, but yeah, I guess I can't say too much except for the varied level of housing is it's just one house, one style house.
Well, I think, you know, it's always challenging to look at kind of conceptual stuff and comment it specifically, but I think it's at the concept where we really make or break places, where we define the big public open spaces, and can be working on those for sure, and where we set the patterns, because then, you know, a year and a half down the road or 3 years down the road, you come in with an application and it's the housing form that this sketch is dictated. So I think it's important to get the concepts really sound, and at this point, I mean, I appreciate the applicants in there already cleaning up and did all of the work along the waterfront. That's an amazing thing for the community. The whole derelict ship and shoreline issue is something we need to all wrestle with. The development of kind of continuous waterfront is bang on. It's what's got to happen, and I think you're along the lines there for sure. And then the connections over to the city are critical. So I think then coming back from the edge is kind of where it starts to fall apart for me too. When I first looked at it, I was quite surprised that there was so much townhouse, so much ground oriented, and maybe if ground oriented housing is what's needed, you know, take half of this away and put it on a different site that's not near the waterfront, and go for some density. Like, to me, this is False Creek South, 1980 along the waterfront, but we need to build Fairview Slopes in behind this, right? So we need that bigger density at the back of this site, and maybe even one of the towers. I don't know. It just seems incredibly suburban back in the east portion of the site. the amenities, you know, I've worked for a number of developers, and in some cases you roll out a lot of the amenities early because that's what sells product. And right now we're in a pretty hot market and anything will sell, but I think it's valuable to get some of the amenities up front. And some of those are critical. Some of them are connection amenities, some of them are waterfront amenities. The social housing component has to be integrated into it. You just can't put it in the back row. I mean, that is, I think Chris said offensive. I find it that way too. It just has to be part of this product, integrated in the product. Maybe it exists, you know, scattered throughout numerous buildings. The flood control is a huge issue, and I think that needs to, Chris or Kim, needs to be a big part of your landscape. You should be kind of celebrating the fact that this place floods and will flood. How do you adapt to it? I don't know if you saw Kevin Connery's work on adaptation to flooding in Richmond, and look up his work that he did there before he left for the City of Vancouver. It's fascinating. I mean, dealing with areas that, you know, if they flood, can they flood? You know, what does it do? It's just part of the design, instead of just trying to hold it all back and hope that rising level doesn't go up.
Even New York is doing some amazing things
Yeah.
in an urban setting.
Yeah. So we've got a 16-foot tide here, so that should be celebrated, right? It's, you know, we've unfortunately got a lot of sheet piling and applications we've seen across the way. There'll be some need for sheet piling in here, or that vertical condition. Vancouver has a lot of vertical waterfront edge, and I think they're still grasping with trying to get better contact with the water. So I think it looks like to the north and the south, you've got the ability to get down and see the water come in and out versus just up and down. The pedestrian bridge is critical. I think, again, when does it go in? And I know how the phasing may or may not work for it, but and I think that pedestrian bridge should be really cool. I think the images you showed were rather pedestrian. It's very, and, you know, this is a Santiago Calatrava moment, right?
We would all dream.
I don't know if the Squamish can afford Calatrava, but I think it could be really fun, and it could be a real jewel for downtown Squamish. And on the downtown Squamish note, I don't want to see too much commercial over here taking it away, but I think Chris talking about mixed-use development, it's kind of smaller commercial just integrated into the housing type, so it isn't all just kind of one type of housing. And if it doesn't, maybe it's live work. And if there's no demand for commercial, it becomes live. If there's a big demand for commercial, then it becomes work, right?
Yeah.
I think the housing type needs to be able to adapt to the market. And I don't want to see it pull too much from downtown. Daycare, things like that. You know, this neighborhood could support a whole daycare on its own, so those kind of amenities. Sorry, I had one more question. What is the purple amenity building?
In process. We're working up the program for that now.
So is that
It'll
a
be-
private amenity for homeowners,
It would
or
be
amenity for the
strata
community?
So accessible by everybody
Okay.
on the site. There'd be spaces within that could be accessible to the broader community as well.
Okay. So maybe there's a public amenity that's like daycare. Certainly got a lot of babies in this place. And then I think lastly is just encourage you to do that transportation overlay and integrate it, and really make sure that future transportation is a big part of this, because we lay down these land use patterns and then we have to live with them. And on that, there's one last question. Is there a plan left out then at, is it Clark Drive, or what's the, how do you get out onto the highway from here?
Clark Drive, the overpass over the rail takes you to a traffic light, so that's your.
And there's not a light there now, right?
No,
That's the one at the Shell?
There is a light.
Left
There
in,
is a
left
light
out?
there.
Oh,
Top of
pardon
the
me.
hill.
Yeah,
Oh, top
right
of the
now
hill.
you come in on Mill Road behind the
Okay,
Shell station.
so this gets you all the way up to the top of the hill?
Yep.
Yes.
There. Oh, great, good.
the
So
Mill
it's an
Road-
existing light, we're not adding another light to the corridor?
That's right, it's just that
Good.
right now it's a T intersection.
Yeah.
and It will become a full
Right,
intersection.
and there is that kind of daycare building up there already,
Church.
which will probably,
That church might have to
yeah,
It doesn't
improve
touch
access.
great. Well, so, you know, a great start. I think you're gonna get all kinds of feedback at all different levels. Good.
Lots
Go
of
for it.
feedback.
But very exciting for Squamish, thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And I did see one slide up there that showed community gardens. So I assume in these parks there's going to be room for community gardens. As for the bridge, you know, the bridge is something that council wants early. And I thought, when I was looking at it, I thought, well, build one side then. You know, just put the one side out from the city, so at least people have a pier to come out to, and, you know, that might be a start. But I think that there's a lot of leverage to putting that bridge across sooner than later. And you could get a lot of perks from the city hall for that. On the density, I have no problem seeing a little higher density in the back along that bluff, if that helps. I think we should have a canoe access at the north as well, because you know, sometimes that south end is going to be fairly windy, and the north end is would be all where the novice paddlers would probably go in. It's nice and calm there. I like what I heard about dealing with rainwater in a different way other than just maybe piping it, if that's what someone was getting to. And then I guess the affordability, I think that as this progresses, affordability will be kind of mixed into neighborhoods, but it is, where the affordable housing is right now is closest to the stores. And it is where the commercial node is. I have no problem with it there.
Isolated.
It's segregated.
It's also,
Well,
yeah, it's not an
isolated.
intergenerational mixed community.
Isolated, except you've got the store downstairs and you've got the barber downstairs and you've got the
The walk
drugstore
by.
downstairs. And I think that's everything on my list. Yeah, so the bridge, I mean, even poking that one side out halfway across the channel might be a, you know, that'd be a start. You could do that starting tomorrow.
Put a diving board on the end.
Yeah, that's the first one you got involved.
That's a building permit right there.
Cheryl?
I guess I would encourage you to kind of really create more of a mixed-use community. And I mean, some of the inspirational images here, you're showing a bit of the Olympic Village, the Athletes Village. Part of why the seaside, the oceanfront is so activated is because of the mixed use, right? So, and the density, obviously. So, I mean, it's hard to imagine anybody else going to this place other than people who are living here. Or maybe that is the intent. I don't know. But, I mean, certainly more density, more mixed use would create these visions for more activated waterfront.
I think you know where I'm going to go with this. I don't think any of the duplexes or townhouses or even the apartments should have the right to be right on the waterfront. I think that is too important a property to be just have another expensive duplex there. I think the affordable housing should be part almost of every building to be, so that I don't feel I take my friends to my affordable housing project when I take them over there. I should be part of the community. I think the fact that there's no parking showed for where I'm going to put my canoe in the water means that this is not meant for me. It's going to be meant for the guy who lives close by and have his canoe in his house. I think the fact that there's not things like daycares and the amenities for people like people who's existing in the community, like Helping Hands, who's looking for spaces. There's great opportunity to integrate those in here instead of making it a townhouse community that is not a destination. I think at the moment what I see here is a tremendous loss of opportunity for the bigger community who's contributing to this development, which is very sad. It is, and it's like Carsten very strongly noted, is that if we don't fix it right now, we're going to start seeing these development permits coming in, and it's just going to be a townhouse development, and it's not going to contribute. We can have housing anywhere. This is just another housing project. This is not making the most. It's not adding anything other than housing. So, that's my comment.
Okay, Jenna?
Thanks for your presentation. This is a no order of hierarchy, but there's a lot of really great thought into the different types of trail systems, multi-use bike and all of those things. I would encourage you to have the bike separate from the pedestrians. This is a really active community, and I think the multi-use trail with this level of density might be difficult. So I think it would be better to have really designated lines. Here's the bikers, this is where you go, the rollerbladers and all of that, so that they on the major streets, rather than being a multi-use path. I think the bridge is a really fun, exciting thing. There's obviously a lot of challenges with the boats coming and going. I instantly get taken to, the Netherlands when you're waiting for the bridge to draw down, and it becomes a really interesting gathering space in its own. So it's a detailed comment, but I think when looking at the bridge, it'd be great to think about those gathering moments where people are forced to wait on the bridge for that draw to go down, and it becomes a really exciting social space. Detailed design, but it's on my mind. I think that there was a lot of comments about the density and the mixed use, and I echo those comments. I think daycare is really important. Buying a jug of milk is really important, especially adjacent to the parks and the waterfront. And then also just the entry here on Laurel, creating some sort of gateway into the development, whatever that may be, I'm not sure, but I think, this is the entry into it. The bridge is also an important entry, but this is really the gateway in from the downtown core, so just anchoring that entry a bit in So in terms of the Green Shore, I think this is a huge topic. It's a really important topic. I really appreciate that you're looking at Green Shore principles, and I encourage that to be driven as deep and as far as possible. Sea level rise is a real reality, and so the treatment of the shore, I think, is very critical to setting the tone for what Squamish believes in terms of sea level rise and our relationship to the natural world. So that's an important one. And then with regards to the rating system, I think this is one that should be looked at really carefully. When we look at the Olympic Village in Vancouver as an example, at the time they changed the story of developments. They were a platinum LEED neighborhood, which won a lot of awards, did a lot of great things, and now it's kind of standard in terms of development. And I think this one should really own something like that. So there's a lot, you're speaking to the green rating standards, but when you're looking at them, I think we should be really mindful of what that standard really means for this particular development. I think LEED is very good for buildings. As a landscape architect, I can say it's not particularly good for landscape. It doesn't really think about the nuances of what plant systems are doing and what water systems are doing, right? And there's, systems such as sites, as an example, that really thinks about holistically how the land is working. So I think there could be some really exciting opportunities there as to how that informs the more detailed design. And just to say, I really appreciate the use of all the different types of park spaces. I think that's really critical to making all these spaces really loved by different areas of the community. And I echo some comments in terms of if it's a public park, there just needs to be a very clear direction that this is public, you can get here, your boat can be launched and such.
Good. All good comments. You're finished, right, Jenny?
Yes,
Sorry,
thanks.
didn't mean to cut you off. And some of those are directed towards the planning document, and I kind of wonder, you know, how, I mean, these are both coming up together. I think the plan and the planning are happening at the same time. So if some of them, the comments seem overly critical, they might actually be really towards the plan, and if the planning's telling you to do 4 to 6 stories everywhere, then that's what you're getting beat up for, unfortunately. So I think, you know, I think it's a very exciting project, and just take those comments under advisement. And are we in a situation here, Jonas, this is an informal application?
It is, yes, we don't need a recommendation.
A motion, okay. So, we've got our typical four motions. 1A to approve as is, B to approve and have the applicant work with staff, C.
We don't need to do that.
Oh, okay.
No, we're presenting it to ADP for comments.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said you wanted a motion. I didn't. Okay.
Let's go to number 6.
Okay. So in this case, we just.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I guess we'll see it back in a more detailed, formal application at some point.
Thanks. Well, it's been very interesting, and I guess, you know, what I've heard today echoed, I think, some of the early feedback that we've also shared, you know, with the density, and it's been a bit of a balancing act trying to get that right amount of commercial and, you know, a housing mix that the applicants feel they can sell, and I guess so there's it's still a juggling act we're going to have to talk further about.
Do something awesome.
What's that, sorry?
Do something awesome.
People will come.
Well, there's a lot of awesome stuff coming along in Squamish, isn't there? It's pretty exciting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a couple little more items, I think. Council, you gonna give us a little council report, Councillor?
Well, I can give you a little council report.
Updates, anything that's gone through the pipe or bounced back?
Well, I was going to ask Jonas to maybe update everybody on our mix of youth policy kind of thing that we're working on right now. You know, where we're looking at having mixtures of housing types in developments.
Yes, housing diversity. So we had a good discussion with council on Tuesday about incorporating direction in the OCP for housing diversity, make sure that we see every project come with a range of housing, not just a single form of housing. So that's something we've been working on incorporating into the OCP, and we'll be refining it more to make sure that every single project is not just a single family project, you know, it incorporates duplexes and townhouses and apartments depending on the scale.
Well, and affordable.
Or every building has 5% affordable.
Yeah,
Like in Europe,
every
it's
building.
affordable housing, senior housing, and daycare.
Yeah.
Those are what make
Yeah.
communities really.
So that planning's helping council work on that right now, and that's why when I heard what you guys were talking about, the affordable portions, and I think that'll work into this more than
I hope so.
that. And then another thing that we have going on is the OCP, and I didn't know how this group was gonna get involved in the OCP, or was it getting involved, or is there any kind of formal?
Yes, there is. This group is involved in the OCP, particularly with the DP area guidelines. We've had, I think, more than one session now. There's going to be the third phase of public engagement is happening in May. So May 24th, mark it on your calendars. There will be a big open house event. It's at Brennan Park, and I believe I will have to follow up with timing on it, but we're sort of gone through phases 1 and 2. First phase was very heavy on engagement, kind of gathering general input from the community, and now we've drafted a discussion draft, and we're making that available to the public, and we're going to hold a big open house to sort of walk people through the main policy sections of the document and get some feedback. Are we getting this right or not? And once phase 3 wraps up, which also will include pop-up engagements in every neighborhood, we'll be coming to council for bylaw readings.
So that's a big thing.
Yes.
Staff's doing a great job on that. And then the last thing I wanted to kind of comment on, which made me very happy, was hearing you guys talk about parking. And I know, I guess that, I thought that was something that wasn't allowed, and I know we asked, staff and council wanted more input from this group on than just, you know, what does it look like. So I was happy to hear comments on parking, and I didn't know if Jonas could, or if we could maybe have more discussion about that sometime, because, you know, you guys see the amount of developments that are coming, and pretty much everyone does have parking variances, like we were saying, someone was saying. And it is a worry of mine. I know it's not a worry so much of everybody on council, but, you know, I was happy to hear some comments like saying we've got to kind of restrain a little bit. And so I don't know if there's anything like that, that, you know, this group could bring information like that back to council. That would really be helpful. So I don't know how we do that.
I think we will have to look at the parking requirements in our zoning bylaw in the near future. And so maybe that's going to be the opportunity. I would argue that most of the recent applications have minor parking variances. You know, if we have a big problem already, they will be a minor contribution to that problem. But
yeah,
what I think we recognize is that we're building today for something that will be here for the next 50 to 100 years. And so the habits might change in that time. So it'd be too bad if we built something that's designed for today that will live for the next 100 years.
And it's funny because that's the tough one that I have. And I say to myself, Ted, just shut up, because in 20 years it's going to be driverless cars picking everybody up, so shut up.
Yeah, but there is parking, we may need to provide the provisions to plug in something. It might not be a big car, but it might be a drone car or something. So the parking, when we do a parking thing, we should allow some provisions for that conduit or whatever it is.
There should be a price for that. And I mean, last time we talked about allowing for the roughing of the electrical for the electric cars.
Yeah.
And because if they don't rough it in now, it's going to be very expensive to add those things.
It's easy to put in. Vancouver, it's mandatory, right?
Yeah.
On multifamily. So it's
And
not.
that should be the same here.
We didn't even bring it up on either of these applications, so.
Well, they mentioned it in that one, you know, so, and brought up the exchange of parking stalls, so I think that's good. I'd love to know what the cash in lieu is going towards, because I support the commercial buyout, because I don't think it makes sense to have commercial parking, but if there was a plan for the main park to be a parking facility in the park, or, I wish I knew what the amount would be, what it's going to, and would help these discussions.
Definitely. I think
Come up with
we need to come up with an idea for parking in the meantime, in the next 50 years where all the cars are going to go.
Look at precedents, like I just don't know.
And that's what the money is supposed to go to.
Yeah.
I see
it's not going anywhere
a
else.
very easy solution is just taking the parking out of the buildings, allowing for more space for residential and commercial, is a logical solution for where we see the cars and the type of cars going. And we can supplement that with one building that is a parking garage. I mean, in Vancouver, they're actively closing down the parking garages because there's not even a gas station in downtown anymore.
Yeah.
So that's inevitably where we're going. So, but having one parking garage that you can get rid of or change later on is much easier than trying to take parking out of buildings later on. We can't do that. So reducing the parking now is a reasonable solution if we can supplement it with something that we can change later on. And we can change the
Piece
parking.
of infrastructure, I think, is the one we brought up, and there's precedents for parks being parkade, and it, you know, if we have to bring up the floodplain, and we have a massive parcel down on the waterfront, I mean, I wish it could have come out of the waterfront development coverage, we were just too desperate at the time to get things going, but you could create a massive piece of infrastructure that could be covered market space, parking, could be an office in 20 years, you know, like it's not hard to get there. There just has to be, I think, a spatial allocation for it. I don't know what land the city owns, but you can get a great...
Not enough.
There needs to be a bit of consideration with those parkades, that there is some extra height in some of those levels of underground parking, as I'm looking at new vans now and.
Yeah. Or to reoccupy and turn them into an office, like in Vancouver, they're changing some of the parkades into
So
offices. And there's some big slab vans to do it, but if they were 8 feet high and not 6 foot
Yeah.
8, you can make it into a habitable space.
And don't do sloping floor planes, do
Yeah.
ramps. Like
Yes.
the building that we saw in the
Yes.
first application, you could take over that second floor, minus the ramp,
Yeah,
and
sure.
turn that all into office space, right?
Yeah, internal,
In
yeah, bigger
25
spaces.
years,
Yeah.
because the
Or a
fourth package
theater or
is right.
something. Yeah,
Yeah.
great ideas.
Someone's mentioned Hoonay Oak Park, lot 1 you could put parking there,
Yeah.
and build a park on top of it.
Yeah,
Yep.
and have little shops on the front.
Yeah.
Pay for it.
Yeah.
Great.
So, about this project, it would have been, it feels me, I would love to have seen the planning, that you guys' take on this before these guys came and did their presentation, because for instance, they see this as part of downtown, but 5% commercial is not downtown. It's like,
Well, that's
So
where there's the
5%
discrepancy.
in area, right?
Yeah.
So it's multi-story.
yeah,
Just like the apartments are only 10%, but they're actually 40% of the density.
yeah.
It's such a valuable piece of land.
Because, yeah, for me, it's
It
like,
is.
dear God, like, it's like,
Well, that was my concern about getting the planning document and the application
Yeah.
the same day. I
Yeah.
think we should have really had a look at that planning document before, because those guys, looked a little jilted.
They're used to it.
Yeah, they're tough.
But they're a great developer to come in and have
Yeah.
the capabilities and experience to
Yeah.
follow it through.
And we said, everything we said
They're not doing
would
townhomes.
probably put more money in their pocket.
No, 100%.
In the long run, yeah.
100%.
Yeah, and I mean, this is now in a way better shape than what it was like when it came
Okay.
in through the door.
but we are very, very far from where this should be, I think. And I really hope that council sees some,
But it
Like, have
can't,
some
it can't
vision here.
compete with downtown. It's gotta be
Yeah,
different.
But
Why?
what is
Enough
it?
with that though.
It's
What's
part
with
of
this
downtown.
You can't even get downtown
But-
second floor offices filled.
Not
But
to
let
say-
it happen as it's gonna happen. I agree, but there's an obsession with making, not allowing Garibaldi Village to have commercial. Because we want it downtown, and not allowing commercial here, because downtown's gotta happen first. Well,
Yeah.
what if downtown becomes the residential neighborhood? And this becomes the commercial district with the
Yeah.
school? I mean,
Fair enough.
we're trying to force things that are challenging when the market's not supporting it.
Or at least set the zoning so that 20 years from now, someone can go and buy those duplexes and put in a,
Yeah, I agree.
The
You
market
could
and
build in
stuff,
more
flexibility.
flexibility into the zoning
Yeah,
bylaw.
because.
Because things will change, and in maybe 10 years when, they've built out 3 or 4 phases, things will change.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because everyone's worried that
Yeah.
apartments won't sell in Squamish, right?
Yeah.
Townhomes sell, and they do, and they make a ton of money. But until someone's gonna be, not forced, but builds a destination, a quality building with quality commercial, how are we gonna, they're gonna keep building
It's got
townhomes?
so much potential, and if you allow these guys, they will just put townhouses in, make a quick buck and leave. And it will be like that for the next 50 to 100 years. Or it can be this unbelievable space.
But it takes the buy-in, it's a huge
Yeah.
financial
almost like-
project
almost
to
just
commit to
build
this.
it into the zoning so that it can become that, and
Yeah.
not be stuck with,
Yeah.
this excessively expensive townhouse that's set on the waterfront.
Well, that's just,
So we're a little off topic again. We were at
we're in the
status
round
of
table.
recommendations to council. Are we?
Well, you see on that there, one thing I also find talking about recommendations to council is that's always, and I guess that's my job to read out the recommendations, but it always seems like I hear some great things here. They don't necessarily get through to council.
Well, council gets minutes of every
Yeah,
meeting.
I know, that's
Kim,
what I'm saying.
you need to close notes, 8
That's your
points.
job.
Yeah,
You're gonna-
yeah.
Well, we could do that, we could summarize much like a chair does for the comments for a panel, we could say what are the key things we're taking away from this.
Yeah.
So I have one example of that is that the building, I think it's the building department of the municipality is putting together an energy advisory group to advise on the building step code changes that's coming. And maybe that group should also advise on what this development, as an example, should meet as an energy standard. Because I mean, Bold Green, it's like from December, Bold Green is outdated. Like seriously, you talk about Bold Green?
Yeah.
It's like they are trying to do as little as possible.
But so many precedents around the world of inspirational projects who aren't thinking within those checklist things. And they're, I mean, that's my thing, is it takes a lot of money to commit to something like Build Green or Living Building Challenge, but there's also quite amazing neighborhoods that are grittier and do amazing things.
Yeah.
With
But
less.
just on that topic, the committee that's being created, they will look at all of Squamish. And so whatever they decide for all of Squamish and then recommend to council,
Will apply to this.
will apply to this as well.
Okay, who are they? Is that internal or is that?
No, that is, that's a group of people that are in the construction industry around Squamish.
Oh.
Yeah. Home Builders Association, and, yeah, they're nice guys.
But is your sense that council's not kind of getting the essence of what's happening at this table?
I guess somewhat, you know, I mean, and I know, like, we'll get a set of plans and then you hear some pretty exciting potential design changes that could happen and they don't happen. And so,
Well, with every project that there's a list in every council report saying, this is what ADP
yeah,
said, and this is how we addressed it,
I know.
right? Or this is what didn't get addressed.
yeah. And
Or are you thinking overarching things?
I just thought about one thing when we were talking about that, we should have the list, like we never asked this guy about electric plugins. You know, I mean, so we should have a list that, you know, like that. I guess that was a slip up. I should have had that on my list.
That should be in the bylaw.
Well,
Well,
that's-
that's DP for this thing.
And that's too much detail
Should
for
be
this
in the
thing,
DP.
but it should be in the.
It's gotta be in the
Yeah,
Is it in the DP for that?
Well,
I
no.
think it should be in the zoning
Yeah.
bylaw, because the DP is their guidelines
It
to
should
deal
be-
with the
yeah.
kind of external side of the buildings. But if it's in the zoning bylaw, then that's regulation.
well,
Yeah.
should be in the DP.
You know, it's gonna be hard for me to explain all the passion that was here about this when this comes to council next time.
Well, just get Derek.
I didn't mean to offend anybody.
Yeah, I thought it was awesome.
If
I thought it was
if I
great.
can't inspire these guys
Yeah.
to just stop thinking outside of
A
townhouse,
suburban townhouse box.
unbelievable.
But then again, I mean, was it the zoning plan or
Yeah,
the
maybe.
DP10 that said
But
make
they
it
as a
all?
client can push back to the district and
Yeah.
say, as the zoning's being written, i.e. a CD zone, we can do whatever we want with support.
And were there
What do you want to
geotechnical?
see? And I think Susan, was it?
Susan, yeah.
Susan said, we're encouraging them to do higher density,
Yeah.
right? So they're trying to write that into the zoning, so I
There's
think-
actually way more density here than when it first came through the door.
Yeah, it was 1,000 units. when it
Yeah, but
first-
it's not very efficient density. Like you squint at this and
Well,
it's
that was
just
the
kind of all the
percentage of
same.
townhomes to apartments, was
Lots of
staggering.
green space.
I forget what it was,
It's
right?
it's 40% apartments, 60% townhomes.
Yeah.
So,
Like-
Jonas, I'm trying to understand how planning see this and the data that you guys have. If these guys come and say we want to put 25% commercial in here over the next 20 years, is this something that you guys will see how they get there and what their intent is? Or is it just something that you guys will say, this is so far off from, that it will take away from the downtown core?
No, they wanted to put in 10,000 square foot of
And they're up to
commercial.
50.
Yeah.
So we pushed it to 50,
Yeah,
um,
which is 5%. So what if we say?
5% of land area.
Yeah, so
But
what if
that's-
we come and say, we want you to put 250,000 square feet, or meters, or whatever it is, 25% commercial here?
Isn't
Would
the
you guys
green
freak
building-
out, or would you be like, what are you gonna do with that space?
I think it depends on how much it does it take away from residential, because what we look for is as all these residential is coming online, we want to make sure that there's enough employment space coming on at the same time, so that at least one person is working in Squamish.
Yeah.
So it all depends what that mix is.
Someone's hearing me.
Yeah,
But
but it's higher than that. I think that's
But-
like bedroom community stuff.
But on a phase development that takes 15 years,
Yeah.
I mean, in 3 years, this could be totally different. It could look totally different than this.
Well, unless you have to rezone it.
Crossings.
I mean, the street patterns, everything are in
Once you get
place.
past the big brush stroke, it's in there, and then you're always fighting it, you know, whether it's parking downtown, or it's the layout of the roads, or it's the use. Like,
Yeah.
ground-oriented housing is romanticized into like townhomes, and it's not. It should be ground-accessible apartments for seniors and families, and high density above that, with mixed-use commercial.
We did
Down here, somewhere else maybe.
Sure.
We did the industrial park 20 years ago, the industrial park.
Yeah.
And then like, oh gee, that's no good, we gotta change it to the business
It's only
park.
20 years,
And
yeah.
now we're looking at, oh, we better put some residential in there. So, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, so in a 20-year time period, we went from industrial
Yeah.
park to business park.
And it's probably
to-
gonna go again to technology and,
Yeah.
you know, so.
So I'm, you know, when I look at the back end of this, 10, 15 years from now, I really don't even care because.
But
Can add density.
but that's the sad thing here, they're building the back end first. Like this thing really should be started at the waterfront
Yeah.
and work towards the highway.
But they know they're gonna build interest, get some
And
money back from the
because then you're
infrastructure.
not hauling all the garbage, like right now, if they build the back, you're driving through it with all the trucks and.
Can you imagine someone want to rezone this for residential later on, multi-story, and you're gonna take some, you're gonna put shadow on these residential houses behind it, you're gonna take their views, and they are, you will have people burning down buildings.
That's standard. That's standard. Come on,
So-
everybody always builds in
Yeah.
the back.
The oceanfront though,
Yeah, it's like.
they have to, don't they have to build the road and build the park
That's their
relatively
highest
like
selling.
quickly
Yeah.
first?
I don't wanna get into
They gotta save for the infrastructure.
I think they've got huge infrastructure costs just to build the overpass,
Land
and
remediation.
connect to Laurelwood. And
But
then
you-
build the road down to, where the Templeton Bridge is gonna be.
Those are gonna be hard units to sell.
But you've got to roll
The first
you've
one.
got to roll a little bit of everything with each phase, I
Yeah.
think.
Like Olympic
Yeah.
Village is such a great,
Yeah.
you know,
Well-
geographically, build out market.
Council
social
did
housing,
make it
Community
clear,
center, like,
the council did make it clear that they wanted that bridge sooner than later.
I couldn't believe that amenity would be strata. That blew me away. I thought these two little buildings
Mm.
and that amenity's gonna be strata? Like that's.
I think the upper floors are strong. We've asked for the bottom to be open to
Okay.
public use.
So,
Like do with it on the Rex.
Yeah, or public daycare.
have we beat that to death? Can we move on?
Yeah,
For now,
I do.
Okay,
Go on.
so Jonas, you had a reimbursable
Oh, yes.
item.
So the budget has been passed, and in the budget, there is travel reimbursement for the ADP members who are traveling outside of Squamish. So if you're coming from Whistler or West Vancouver or further away, you'll get reimbursed. You have to submit a form at the end of the meeting, or within 10 days of the ADP meeting happening. So
And
I've
it's
got a
starting
bunch
today?
of- Starting today, yes.
Can't go retroactively.
No.
yeah. You can
The
go to
budget doesn't work
Hawaii.
that way. So
Fair
I've got a bunch of forms.
Thank you for that.
Fill those out and submit it to the Sarah.
Can we do them electronically in the future, or what? Can you have them-
It's better if you just have them at the end of the
Right here?
meeting. then
Okay.
just have them. Yeah.
Okay, so, if we can have a stack of them at every meeting, and then people, while they're daydreaming, can fill it out, that'd be
I also
great.
have some minutes here, if people are available to sign them, that would be great.
Thanks for getting that through. Found some room in the budget, did you?
Steven.
Okay, so, if there's nothing else, motion to terminate the meeting? Sarah, seconded by Derek, all in favor? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for showing up.